Chapter 231. Genius remembers love in 1 second / small. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. Luo Yu didn't have time to wash herself, so she was dirty and messy on the way. She fell to the ground several times, but she was immediately pulled up violently by someone. Along the way, the lady boss, who still retained some of her charm, was so anxious that she began to cry. It was here the sea cliff. Luo Yu had no idea why these people brought her to this place. It was not until then that the cloth on her mouth was removed. "You bastards! Let me go! What do you want to do?" Luo Yu screamed. Grandpa A Bao glanced at her, saying coldly, "You'll know later." At this moment, a group of people walked up one after another from behind. Each of these people was pushing a hopper cart, and on top of each hopper cart, there were 1 or 2 people. Dozens of hopper carts were filled with people. The sky had already turned completely bright. When Luo Yu saw the people in the hopper carts, she was so scared that she almost fell down on the ground. A middle-aged man walked to Grandpa A Bao. "Grandpa A Bao, all the patients are here." Grandpa A Bao nodded. "Where are their relatives?" The middle-aged man said they didn't agree in the clinic. However, among these people, there were people who suddenly had a relapse. This time, they had no choice but to agree. There were a few who had been against it, but they were stopped by their brothers. The rest didn't dare to say anything. They didn't come this time, saying they didn't want to see it. "But I let people guard the clinic and don't let them come out." Grandpa A Bao nodded. "I checked the time. It'll be the auspicious hour in 1 hour. Let's worship the sea god at once." "Worship? What worship? Make it clear." Luo Yu felt that something was wrong. She had been in a state of near ignorance about this matter, but her intuition told her that she would be in more danger than anyone else. The middle-aged man came to Luo Yu, sneering, "Of course, we'll use you to worship the sea god. Do you see the faces of these patients? Only by offering you to the sea god can we protect Lui village." "What?" Luo Yu struggled in fright. But it was 2 strong men who caught her. How could she get rid of them? Luo Yu couldn't help cursing. "You bastards! Bastards! Let me go! Let me go! I want to see the village head. Tell him you're going to kill me." "Shut up!" The middle-aged man snorted, pointing at the hopper carts. "The village head is here. He's sick." Luo Yu was stunned. Then, as if she had a mental breakdown, she struggled even more violently. Immediately, her mouth was stuffed with a cloth again. She could only be pressed to the ground, crying out in terror from her throat. At this time, she was scared out of her wits and was trembling. At this time, another group of people. From afar, Luo Yu seemed to hear Wu Qiushui's voice, and she couldn't help but reignite a glimmer of hope. Ren Xiling walked back and forth in the reception hall of the holiday house. Li Zi, who was dazzled, couldn't help but say, "Sister Ren, it's useless to be anxious here. After all, this is really not our place. That's why it's so annoying." Ren Xiling gritted her teeth. "What kind of society are we living in? How can there be such people? And a group of them?" "Shoo, keep your voice down." Li Zi said carefully. Iyun helped her grandpa into the room. Her father disappeared, her mother was caught, and her grandpa was like this. Ren Xiling sighed. This was the thing that made her feel the most helpless. "Have something to eat." Luo Qiu walked out of the kitchen with a tray in his hand. There were 2 casseroles on it. "I can't eat anymore." Ren Xiling sat down, still sulking. Luo Qiu put down one of the casseroles and a porcelain spoon on the tray. "Ginger and minced pork porridge. I also put some shrimps and dried fish." Ren Xiling swallowed her saliva subconsciously. Li Zi was more direct, looking at the pot with shining eyes. "Wait until it's cold." Luo Qiu didn't say anything, just opened the lid a little, and then walked up the stairs with the other pot. "Hey, boy, where are you going?" "I'm going to bring some food to my grandpa." Seeing Luo Qiu walking up, Ren Xiling was stunned. She wanted to say something but stopped. This kid was too good at taking care of people. "So, you like this kid because of this?" For Xiling's mother, Luo Qiu was full of merits. Even if he was dull, it could be regarded as pure. Sub-editor Run, who was used to jumping to conclusions, suddenly glared at Luo Chio. Lizzie, get me a bowl. Huh? Sister Run, didn't you say you can't eat? It's none of your business. By the way, where's Yi Yi? I haven't seen her since just now. I seem to see her going back to her room. Lizzie said with a spoon in her mouth. Alas, Rin Xiling sighed. Originally, she intended to take this opportunity to have a good look at Luochio's girlfriend and get in touch with their relationship. She didn't expect to encounter such a thing. This girl named Yi Yi, I don't know if she was scared. Rin Xiling thought subconsciously, sending a mouthful of hot porridge into her mouth. F***CK. It's scalding me. Rin Xiling stuck out her tongue and fanned with her palm. Lizzie giggled and couldn't help but laugh. Why are you laughing? Haven't you seen anyone scalding their tongue? Rin Xiling suddenly rolled her eyes. Lizzie shook her head. No, it's not that. It's just that I realize that your eldest son really knows you better than you do. Big Sister Rin. He told you to eat it when it's cold, but you still fell for it. Rin Xiling was embarrassed. Crack. The moment the door was opened, Louis Yun was stunned, looking at Luochio with an unnatural expression and the plate he was holding. Can I come in? Oh, okay. Louis Yun nodded. She still didn't look good. She saw Luochio coming in. This was Louis Buhai's room, a very simple room. At this time, Louis Buhai just sat at the end of the bed, quietly, looking at the sea outside the window. The old man's body was here, but his most important things were not. Luochio walked to Louis Buhai, glancing at Louis Yun and then at Louis Yun. The girl hurriedly walked over, taking the plate from Luochio's hand, forcing a smile. Sorry to trouble you. You're the guest. I'm used to receiving people. Luochio said softly. Louis Yun didn't know how to reply to this person who made her feel scared, lowering her head and fiddling with the porridge in the plate. She scooped some porridge out, tasting the taste and heat. The girl was stunned at once. Is it not to your taste? Louis Yun said, No, it's much better than what I usually cook. But my grandpa won't eat anything without pickled cabbage. Okay, I'll get some. Luochio nodded. Louis Yun hurriedly said, No need. I don't know where you are. I'll be back soon. Louis Yun quickly left the room. In fact, Boss Luo saw a small plate of cut pickled cabbage beside the casserole, but he didn't bring it with him. Now he was looking at Louis Buhai's room. Paintings with only a simple outline were hung on the surrounding walls. Some of them were even yellowed. Louis Buhai was still looking at the sea outside the window, as if the previous excitement was just an accidental sobriety. Essentially, he was still the old man with Alzheimer's symptoms. Luochio walked to a wall, stretching out his fingers, stroking the different but the same drawings. Why don't you finish them? If the old man still remembered, he would remember that this question had appeared when they first met. Louis Buhai, who was silent, had an unusual reaction to this question. He slowly turned his head. When his turbid eyes met with Luochio's, Louis Buhai's eyes seemed to recover a bit of clarity. Save her, he repeated over and over again, as if he didn't know what he was saying, as if he knew what he was saying better than anyone else. Louis Buhai's eyes slowly recovered their turbidity, looking at the vast sea again. However, an old parchment slowly unfurled in front of him. When his palm pressed on the parchment, the last trace of clarity in Louis Buhai's eyes disappeared. He returned to the appearance when he was sitting on the lawn, painting towards the sea. Chapter 232. Genius 1. Second, remember love, divided by little. Say net, providing you with wonderful novels to read. When Louis Yun returned to Louis Buhai's room, she didn't see Luochio. Love, go little say, net could the girl frown in confusion, but she still walked to Louis Buhai. Her grandpa was still the same as before. Not the same as before. In an instant, Louis Yun felt that Louis Buhai was different from usual. He was quieter than before. The little girl couldn't even see the last trace of intelligence in her grandfather's eyes. It was as if the person sitting there now was just a shell. She suddenly felt frightened. Looking at the pair of completely turbid eyes, the girl stepped back step by step, covering her mouth until she touched the windowsill. Louis Yun opened the window, subconsciously. She didn't want to see Louis Buhai in this state, so she stuck her head out of the window, breathing deeply. One day, he would forget everything, his family, his home, his everything, even himself. This was the final result of Alzheimer's disease, and there was no way to reverse the situation. The girl knew it early. In this age of advanced information, young people could always grasp various means of exploration because of their desire for exploration. She knew it early, but she only hoped that this day would come later. 1 year, 1 month, 1 day, 1 hour was fine. She breathed in the fresh air again and again, but the salty air didn't make her feel better. Louis Yun was not as strong as she thought. Her tears could not reach the sea in front of her. They fell into her palms and then dripped onto the window frame. They did not make a sound, but at this moment, she saw the young man who was looking at something on the lawn by the side. Louis Yun opened the door of the balcony, walking down the stairs and coming to the lawn. She came to the young man subconsciously. She realized that she really had done this subconsciously, so much so that when she arrived, a trace of regret had already surfaced in her heart, because from this direction, she was looking at the Hear the Sea cliff. It should be very lively up there now. Luochio turned around, looking at Louis Yun, saying softly, "Did you do something to my grandfather? Or did you say something to him?" But from the little girl's words, he had touched upon some things that had indeed happened. Luochio smiled. He tried to give the little girl some peace and quiet at this moment. He said, "What do you think I did to your grandfather? What did I say?" Rin Xiling was an easy person to get along with. Lizzie was a simple and easy person to see through. As for the one called Yu Yi, she was a mysterious person. These were the things that the little girl felt in this short contact, and the person in front of her was mysterious and difficult to get along with. Louis Yun moved her eyes away and looked at the sea. "I don't know." Luochio nodded and looked in the direction of Hear the Sea cliff once more. "There's still no news from Wu Qiushui. In other words, your mother could be thrown down by the villagers at any time. You don't seem to be too worried." "Of course not." Louis Yun gritted her teeth. "I'll go there too, but Grandpa is alone. Don't you want her to be thrown down?" This time, Luochio was more direct. "No." Louis Yun raised her head. "She's not your birth mother. I just know it. Have you eaten anything?" "What?" "Yes." "What did you eat?" "Who made it?" "What time did you eat?" "How much did you eat?" "Noodles or rice?" "How much do you usually eat?" "What's your choice in the college entrance examination?" "Is there anyone who has the same choice as you?" "You already know she's not your birth mother." "Did you fall in love at a young age?" "What did you fall in love at a young age?" "When did you know it?" "Who's your partner?" "How high is he?" "What's his name?" "Does he like you?" "Porridge. I made at 5 a.m. A bowl. Porridge. A bowl. Siwang University. I knew it. No. I didn't fall in love at a young age. Before the college entrance examination, I said I didn't have a partner. I don't know. I said I didn't have a partner. How could I know?" Under a series of urgent questions, the girl also responded quickly. She didn't know why she was in such a hurry to answer his questions. As if it was an instinct, she quickly asked one question after another. In the end, she covered her mouth in shock. "I knew it. Before the college entrance examination. You set me up." The girl looked at him angrily. Luochio shook his head. "I didn't force you, nor did I ask you to answer me immediately. Why did you answer me with the speed of my questions?" Louis Yun gave a start. Luochio suddenly said, "Your father is not in the clinic." Louis Yun said subconsciously, "How could that be? Didn't your father go missing in the clinic?" "Why not?" "Because." Louis Yun moved her lips again, but couldn't say anything. "Why did Louis Chaosheng help you? Or, why did you help him?" Luochio exhaled. Louis Yun lowered her head. She knew some things couldn't be concealed, but she was still very confused. When did you find out? Was it because you saw me smiling in the kitchen?" "At that time, I was sure you had some problems," Luochio said indifferently. "As for the suspicion, it should be yesterday." Louis Yun was surprised. "Yesterday?" Luochio nodded. "Your reaction was a bit different when we were in the noodle house yesterday." Louis Yun was still confused. "What reaction did I have?" Luochio said, "That should be the second patient we saw. Logically speaking, since you've already seen him once, you shouldn't have panicked and turned your head away. But the fact is you turn around and someone walked in at that time." Luocio said carefully, "That kid is about the same age as you. He's the wife of the noodle house, the grandson of the patient. Since he's about the same age as you, that means you know each other. There's only one primary school in this village. If you want to go to middle school or high school, you can only go to the town outside. You should be classmates, right? You didn't want that boy to see you." Louis Iyun said unbelievably. "Just because of this detail?" Luocio shook his head. "No, I just felt strange at the beginning. Why didn't you want your classmates to recognize you? Then I thought it might be because your family wasn't welcomed in this village, or maybe you didn't have a good school life. So I didn't think too much about it. But it also made me a little more careful. Until early morning, when you were in the kitchen, until you heard the sound outside." He looked at Louis Iyun, looking in her eyes. "You really didn't know?" Other than smiling, your eyes were very calm. "You gave me the feeling that you already knew everything." "Then you asked about my father. I'm just asking casually. If I'm asked by a regular policeman, I'll probably do the same." Luocio shook his head. "No, it'll be more professional." What was the experience of having a policeman as a father? There were a lot of books on tracking and interrogation techniques at home. Now, he was the boss of the club. But before that, he was just a young man with dreams, longing, and eagerness to inherit his father's will and read those obscure books in high spirits. Louis Iyun's eyes changed. She took a deep breath, as if she had changed into another person. She seemed to have completed the transformation from a girl to an adult at this moment, and the transformation brought coldness in her eyes. "I always thought that Rinziling was the one I should be wary of, but I didn't expect it to be you." Luocio said softly, "No, I'm just a little different from her. You're right to be wary of her, because this woman will find out the truth sooner or later. Just like a mouse, she can always smell what she wants to smell." Louis Iyun put her hands behind her back, looking at Luocio calmly. "No matter who it is, they know it. That's right, I instructed Louis Chaosheng to hide my father, and I instructed him to spread the virus. Before I die, I'm not afraid to tell you that even Grandpa Abao is controlled by me. But I'm going to help you." "What?" The girl's hands behind her back, which she intended to use, suddenly became stiff. Chapter 233. Genius 1. Second, remember love divided by little. I'll provide you with wonderful novels to read. The sea breeze was blowing. The girl's eyes were like the sea surface that welcomed the sea breeze. "Love, go little, say, Louis Iyun suddenly approached Luocio. She raised her head at the distance of 7 centimeters, as if questioning him. "Why do you want to help me? Do you know what I'm going to do?" Luocio said, "No matter what you're going to do." Louis Iyun lowered her head, saying thank you. But the girl still took action. It was her right hand. The girl caught the person whom she had known for less than 3 days. Her delicate arms possessed an unimaginable strength. With a single lift, she had already lifted an adult up. Without stopping for a moment, she fell onto the grass. In an instant, he seemed to have fainted from the fall. The girl looked at Luocio, who closed his eyes on the ground, breathing in the salty sea breeze. There was never a lack of sea breeze here. Louis Iyun stroked her hair, whispering, "But I don't need anyone's help." She glanced at the resort, holding Luocio, who fainted on the ground. She walked around the lawn quietly, going out from the back of the resort. It was the hillside. There was a small mountain road behind the resort. After walking for a while, she saw a cabin. Louis Iyun carried Luocio into the cabin. Using the tools here, an unusually thick hemp rope, she tied him to a square wooden pillar that supported the cabin. The girl was thoughtful. She took out his phone, putting it in a place that he couldn't reach, and turning it off. She confirmed that there was nothing around Luocio that could help him escape. She stepped back slowly, saying softly, "Big brother, please stay here for a few days, just a few days." I'm too full." Lizzie touched her belly and leaned on the chair. She licked her lips and burped. "Sister Run, I admire you." Rinziling put down the bowl and asked in astonishment, "Admire me for what? You can't gain weight." Lizzie blinked and said, "Look, your family's Luocio has maxed out his cooking skills, right? The food you make is too delicious. After all these years, you haven't put on any weight at all. If I don't admire you, who should I admire?" "Go, go, go." Rinziling waved her hand. He happened to see Louis Yun coming in. Rin Xiling asked curiously, "Huh? Why did you come in from outside? Didn't I just see you go upstairs?" Louis Yun said, "Well, I came down from the stairs of the terrace. I saw a figure and thought it was my father. In the end, I was wrong." Rin Xiling comforted her. "It's okay. Your father will definitely come back." In order to prevent the little girl from being hurt even more, Rin Xiling had to change the topic. "By the way, Luochio also came upstairs. Didn't you see him? Where is he?" Louis Yun said, "Mr. Luo said he had something to do, so he went out." Rin Xiling gave a start. She frowned and took out her mobile phone. After a while, Rin Xiling frowned more tightly. "His phone is turned off. What's wrong with him?" "Sister Run, he's an adult. What are you worried about?" Li Zi asked. Rin Xiling said, "Other places are fine, but this village is weird. Besides, how can he leave his girlfriend and go out alone? No, I have to check on Yu Yi. I don't know if she's scared." She seemed to be cheered up at once. Seeing Rin Xiling running away hurriedly, Li Zi shook her head and sighed. She worries too much. Even if she's her biological daughter, she doesn't need to be so concerned. The relationship between mother and daughter-in-law must be very good. Mother and daughter-in-law? Louis Yin opened her mouth. Did she hear it wrong? Li Zi smiled. She looked at the little girl and explained the relationship briefly. Louis Yin looked at the direction where Rin Xiling left, whispering, "I thought they were cousins, but I didn't expect." Many people didn't expect it either. Li Zi smiled secretly in her heart. A young woman like Rin Xiling insisted on taking care of her late husband's son at such a young age. Many people were shocked. Many people rolled their eyes and tried to figure it out maliciously. But after all these years, Rin Xiling was still strong. This was a strange anecdote even from the point of view of human, let alone from the point of view of a monster. That was even more incredible. However, she likes food. Now that she is working in a magazine, she, a greenhorn, always feels a strange charm every time she sees Rin Xiling respond to the supercilious looks with ridicule. The little assistant of the magazine, the little monster who liked food, felt that her current job was actually very good. Of course, now there seemed to be one more reason to stay with Sister Rin. The little assistant, who had never revealed her true form, licked her lips and looked at the clean casserole. "If there's nothing else, I'm going to accompany my grandpa." Louis Yun collected herself and said, "Oh, of course." Li Zi nodded naturally. Clap, 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 clap. Suddenly, there was a sound of knocking on the door. Both of them were stunned. When they opened the door, they saw Wu Qiushui from outside. The secretary of Louis Village looked very anxious at this time. The moment he opened the door, he looked at Louis Yun and asked quickly, "Did your mother come back?" Louis Yun was surprised. "Secretary Wu, did something happen to my mother? Didn't come back?" Wu Qiushui frowned, then said anxiously, "We just arrived to hear the sea cliff and saw those people there. I plan to negotiate with them." Wu Qiushui sighed. "I'm really ashamed the negotiation failed. Alas, I've never seen anyone as incompetent as me. I'm sorry." Louis Yun grabbed Wu Qiushui's sleeves nervously. Then my mother, she's fine." Wu Qiushui said. "She was saved by a young man." Li Zi was stunned. "A young man?" Wu Qiushui nodded. "Yes, a young man with blonde hair and a tattoo on his arm. But it was too chaotic, so I didn't see it clearly." "Secretary Wu, can you tell me the details of the scene?" Rin Xiling asked with a frown as she walked out from the back without anyone noticing. "Sister Rin," Li Zi shouted. Rin Xiling said, "Yu Yi is in bed. She should be asleep. I didn't wake her up. Let's get down to business. Who was the one who saved the boss's wife?" Wu Qiushui continued, "I don't know him. I've never seen him before. He shouldn't be from Louis Village. This young man was quite powerful. He beat the man to the ground in just a few moves. But he seemed to be worried about something, so he didn't beat him too hard. Until Grandpa A Bao and the others came up, the young man couldn't do anything, so he cursed. Then he carried your mother and rushed out of the crowd, running down the mountain. I thought he would bring your mother back here first, so I came here to have a look." "What did he curse?" Rin Xiling frowned. Wu Qiushui glanced at Rin Xiling, saying perfunctorily, "Nothing. just a few words of barbarism. Rin Xiling knew that she couldn't continue to ask. The secretary of the village committee was still concerned about the reputation of the village. But in her opinion, such concern was more or less like burying his head in the sand. But the young man with blonde hair and tattoo on his arm, was he the weird guy they met in the resort? Rin Xiling and Li Zi looked at each other. At this moment, Little Du rushed in from outside and said anxiously, "Secretary, Grandpa Bao brought a group of villagers here. I saw they were holding hoes and sickles. They're so fierce." "What?" Wu Qiushui was shocked. The rope was like a snake that was affected by the flute, twisting and turning, then loosened naturally. Luo Qiu stood up, looking at the environment of the cabin. At this time, the door was pushed open. That was Miss Maid of the club. Yu Yu was holding an old box in her hands. Luo Qiu walked in front of Yu Yi and opened the box. He lifted the white cloth that looked like a national flag and looked at the small test tubes in the many grids. Boss Luo took one out, shaking it, saying lightly, "Use them all." Yin 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 yin. Chapter 234. Genius remembers love in 1 second / small. This is a wonderful novel for you to read. Momo's face didn't look good. On one hand, he hadn't recovered yet. On the other hand, he was infuriated. He wasn't a real worldly person, but he felt it was inconceivable when he heard about what happened in Louis Village 45 years ago. But today, after witnessing the behavior of Louis Village's villagers, this inconceivable feeling turned into absurdity and anger. They won't chase us anymore. Momo looked at this panic-stricken woman. He didn't comment on this woman's appearance and age, but said indifferently, "Are you okay?" "How could you be fine?" Luo Yu was really scared. She was still nervous and frightened. Even though she was saved by this guy, she didn't trust anyone at this moment. The lady boss of the resort took 2 steps back in fright, her face full of vigilance. "Who are you?" "I'm Momo." Momo said indifferently, "Take me as a tourist." "Why did they do that to you?" Luo Yu pulled herself together, shaking her head. But when she thought of those patients who were pushed up the cliff, she vaguely understood something, saying subconsciously, maybe it's because I'm married. The people of this village have never been good at marrying outsiders. It doesn't matter to outsiders, but you're married here, so it's a bit unreasonable. Momo shook his head. Luo Yu sighed. It said that this lousy village doesn't allow outsiders to marry, regardless of gender. Momo didn't intend to blame this custom. He had seen more unreasonable customs. He shook his head. "Where do you live? I'll send you back first and think of a solution." Luo Yu was shocked. "I won't go back. If I go back, they will definitely catch me. No, I have to leave this lousy place." Momo looked at Luo Yu's appearance, saying calmly, "Even if you want to leave, you should go back and pack up first. How far can you go in this state?" Luo Yu stared blankly for a moment. What this unknown guy said was not wrong. However, after experiencing such a thing, she could not trust others too much, especially when this guy saved her. He was really too good at fighting. He was like those action stars in TV dramas. If she hadn't seen it with her own eyes, she wouldn't have believed that there was such a good fighter in the outside world. But with a head of blonde hair, he didn't look like a good person. All right then. Luo Yu gritted her teeth, thinking that the worst-case scenario would not be as bad as just now. Thinking of how this guy had risked his life to save her, even if he was a bad guy, he would not be that bad. "I'm staying at the resort on the mountainside." Momo was stunned and frowned. Wasn't the holiday house on the mountainside where that senior was temporarily staying? To go or not to go? 2 groups of people, one group led by Grandpa Bao, the other group led by Wu Qiushui were young villagers. They were all from the same village, but in this place, there was a stalemate. "Do you really not care about the law? All of you go back." Once the road was cleared and they were sent to a well-equipped hospital, all the patients could be treated. This was not a curse. You have to believe in science. Wu Qiushui shouted. "Do you want to repeat the tragedy that happened in your village that year?" "Bullshit. What's science? What is not a curse?" Grandpa Bao was very old, but his voice was as strong as Wu Qiushui's. "Tell me, if it's not a curse, what disease is it? Is it a cold?" Was it a fever, gastrodia, or chickenpox? What disease can make people like this? Wu Qiushui was angry. The world is so big, it's not strange that there are diseases that you haven't seen before. The most important thing is to figure out the cause and treat it, instead of believing in the illusory God. Grandpa, a bow snorted. Then tell me, why is the road blocked? Why is the boat broken? And why did the cliff collapse again in the same day? Don't tell me it's a coincidence. I'll figure it out, but you need to give me some time, Wu Qiushui said with a tough attitude. But I won't allow you to continue. Go back now. Grandpa, a bow, knocked his crutch heavily. Today, no matter what, we have to sacrifice that woman to the god of sea. Then our village will be saved. Secretary Wu Qiushui, get out of my way. Usually, we respect you because you're the secretary and treat you politely. However, this is related to the life and death of the entire Louis village. It's our business. It's not your turn to criticize us. Wu Qiushui even had an impulse to slap this old man, who was so stubborn and unreasonable. She's not inside. Wu Qiushui took a deep breath. Go back now. There are only children and some tourists in this holiday house. This is a private place. You're not allowed to mess around. Grandpa, a bow snorted. You think she's not inside? You want to protect this woman, but you said she's not inside. In fact, the person who injured so many of us just now might have been ordered by you. I don't know that guy. Don't talk nonsense. Wu Qiushui glared at him. Grandpa, a bow's heart pounded when he saw Wu Qiushui's angry stare. But he gritted his teeth, saying fiercely, Search. Go in and search. Find her. Seeing this old man instigate the older generation behind him with the prestige that he had built in the village for decades, Wu Qiushui could only say helplessly, Stop them. Don't let them in. You should have a bottom line. Grandpa, a bow. Do you really want these young people to confront their elders? Grandpa, a bow snorted. You know we're their elders? Then why do you let them fight against us? Do you really want to fight against us? You kids, who watched you grow up? Get out of my way. The young villagers behind Wu Qiushui hesitated. Many of them were their elders. Seeing these young people hesitating, Grandpa, Bao waved his crutch, saying, Go in and search. F*CK. I've tolerated you old B** stars for a long time. But at this moment, sub-editor Rin rushed out with a hoe in her hands. She put the hoe on the ground. You bunch of old bastards who can't tell right from wrong. Come in if you dare. Come and bully the young girls and elders here. I want to see if you're men or not. Come on. I'll knock you off one by one. Don't mind this woman. Go in. Grandpa, a bow shouted sharply. The older villagers at the back were naturally not really afraid of a woman. At this moment, one by one, they rushed forward. Unexpectedly, this woman was indeed valiant. She held the hoe and waved it around randomly, making people not dare to approach her. Let's go together. If we can't find her, we'll be cursed to death. Grandpa, a bow, shouted again. More people immediately rushed forward recklessly, forcing Rin Xiling to retreat step by step. You guys don't act recklessly. Wu Qiushui couldn't stand it anymore, stepping forward bravely to catch a villager, but was pushed to the ground by a fierce person. Secretary. Little Du was shocked and hurried forward, but he was also caught by this group of crazy people. As for the young villagers, some of them came up to stop them, some were hesitant, and some hid at the side. However, a large group of people had already rushed up, and the scene suddenly became extremely chaotic. When Rin Xiling couldn't stand it anymore, suddenly, a loud sound came from the entrance of the holiday house. What followed was a deep roar. All of you stop right there? There was no law anymore, was there? Believe it or not, I'll shoot you. After this shout, two more loud noises sounded in succession. The villagers were all alarmed. They saw a slightly plump middle-aged man with a mustache standing behind them. At this moment, he was pointing a pistol at the sky and shooting all the way. Then, behind this middle-aged man, three young men rushed out one after another. They were all wearing police uniforms, and this time, they all pointed their guns at him. Throw it to me. Throw away the things in your hands. Stand aside, the middle-aged man said fiercely. or I'll show you the consequence of attacking a police officer. Police officer. Thank you so much. How'd you come here? Wu Qiushui regained her composure, quickly walking to the middle-aged police officer, asking curiously. Unexpectedly, the middle-aged police officer didn't answer, but walked directly to Rin Xiling. Sub-editor Rin supported her body with one hand holding a hoe and the other hand on her waist. She was gasping for breath, glaring at the middle-aged police officer. The middle-aged police officer said in a kind tone, "That's sister-in-law. Can you not be so fierce next time? Can you come earlier next time?" Rin Xiling said angrily. "If you come later, I'll be shot in the head by these people." The middle-aged police officer said with a bitter face, "I swear to God, I rushed all the way here after receiving your call in the middle of the night last night. Do you think it's easy to mobilize the police force? I borrowed a helicopter from someone. I rushed all the way without going through the procedures. I'll be scolded to death later, okay? Besides, it's good that I can find a place to land in this damn place. Now I'm here. Calm down, calm down." Ren Xiling threw away the hoe in her hand, still gasping. "Let me drink some water first." "Sister Ren, water." Lizzie trotted to get a bottle of mineral water and then asked in a low voice, "Sister Ren, is this Sir Ma? Why did he come here?" Ren Xiling drank a mouthful of water and said happily, "Yesterday, I felt that this village was weird and there were people blocking the road. Of course, I'm looking for help. Didn't you hear my good son say that this is not our place? So, don't mess around? Well, I'll make this our place temporarily. No wonder you're so calm. It turns out that you already have a backup plan." Lizzie couldn't help but exclaim. Rin Xiling was indifferent to such compliments. She wiped the water on her face with her hand and then walked to Mahoud. At this moment, a group of villagers had to obey several policemen with guns. They held their heads with their hands and squatted on the road outside the resort. The scene was quite spectacular. "Old Ma, I've told you the situation clearly. What do you think we should do?" Rin Xiling said. Mahoud frowned and shook his head. "It's hard to say. This kind of collective thing is the most troublesome. By the way, where's Luochio? Is he okay? Why isn't he here?" Rin Xiling shook her head and said, "He went out early in the morning, and I don't know where he is now. I'm also worried. Damn, speaking of the devil, he's back." On the path down the mountain, Luochio walked up slowly with 2 bags in his hands. He looked at the villagers squatting on the road, and Rin Xiling and Mahoud in front of him, showing a slight astonishment. Of course, there were Lizzie, Wu Qiushui, and the others, and the little girl Luiyan. At this moment, the little girl's face was filled with astonishment. She was completely stunned as she looked at this person who was leisurely walking back. He should have been tied up in the small wooden house. In the end, Luochio still walked in front of them. "Uncle Ma, what happened?" "Oh, it's like this," Sir Ma was about to say. Rin Xiling was one step ahead, walking to Luochio, hugging him. "Where have you been? Do you know you scare me to death?" When she waved the hoe, she was as tough as a female general, but now, when she hugged Luochio, she was so weak that her eyes were misty. "There's no food in the kitchen, so I went outside to get some." He glanced at Luiyan, who was far away, and the little girl hurriedly moved her eyes away. Luochio then said in a low voice, "It's not good for the little girl to take care of us after what happened, right? Do you need to turn off your phone when you go shopping?" Rin Xiling let go of Luochio, glaring at him, but she wasn't angry anymore. No signal. Rin Xiling became silent, rolling her eyes and smiling. "I forgive you, Mahoud." He was dumbfounded. Suddenly the phone rang, from the villagers squatting down. The villager was under great pressure from the police, so he answered the phone. Chapter 235. Geniuses Remember Love in 1 Second. Go. This is a wonderful novel for you to read. The sudden news sent the villagers squatting on the road into a state of confusion. No matter what they were doing here, no matter how inhumane it was to do what they were going to do, their original intention was to protect themselves and prevent their families from being persecuted by the curse. But now, the villagers all had a disease. The sea god is angry. Grandpa Abao screamed, "The sea god is angry." "It's you. You stopped us from offering the sacrifice to the sea god. It's finally angry. Our whole village will die. It's you. It's you who killed us. Along with Grandpa, a bow shout. Those villagers squatting on the ground and holding their heads looked different. A few courageous villagers even slowly stood up at this moment. Sir Ma glared at them, saying angrily, "What do you want to do? Squat down. My wife and son are in the village. They all have a disease. You let me squat here, you're killing my whole family. I'll fight with you." All of a sudden, a villager rushed out. Mahoud shot at the road. The gunshot reverberated in the mountain, extremely loud. The villager stopped. His face turned pale and his lips trembled. Two policemen came over at the same time and caught the man. Sir Ma said in a low voice, "I know you're anxious. I understand your feelings, but I won't let you go back. No one is allowed to leave here. I don't believe in curses, but since the whole village has a disease, there's another possibility. That is, this strange disease may be terrifyingly infectious. If you go back rashly, you may be infected. If you're infected, who will save your family?" Looking at the silent villagers, Mahoud heaved a sigh, saying in a gentle voice, "Please believe us. We're here to solve the problem, instead of engaging in these pointless battles with you all. But if you're still making trouble here, especially if someone instigates it, don't blame me for being impolite." Saying this, Mahoud glared at a bow, which made the most prestigious elder in the village tremble and lower his head hurriedly. "Wait, I've ordered you to go to the seaside, where my helicopter landed. Then someone will take you away." After calming down the villagers, Mahoud pulled Rin Xiling and Luochio aside, saying quietly, "After leaving, someone will send you to the hospital for examination. You want us to leave?" Rin Xiling said discontentedly. Mahoud tried to persuade him. "I'm just worried that you'll be infected by the virus. You see, this place is full of strange diseases. Don't be willful." Luochio suddenly said, "Uncle Ma, what will you do if we leave?" Mahoud looked at Luochio, feeling comfortable. Only this big nephew cared about him, unlike a certain sister-in-law. He smiled. "Don't worry. I just talked with Secretary Wu. He had also sent a boat from the town. Besides, we're paid by the government, so we can't leave people alone when there's danger. But you're different. You can leave if necessary. Besides, you'll only distract me if you stay here." Luochio shook his head. "Uncle Ma, I'm afraid we can't leave now." Mahoud gave a start, saying unconsciously, "Boy, when did you become as unreasonable as your mother?" "Mahoud, what did you say? Are you looking for death?" Luochio glanced at Rin Xiling. Sub-editor Rin Xiling was most afraid of this kind of look, so she stopped immediately. Luochio heaved a sigh of relief and said, "Uncle Ma, as you said, if we are infected, we can't leave. You see, we don't know the pathogenesis of this disease, and we don't know if it's contagious. If we leave now, there's a chance we'll bring the virus out with us, right? Think about the consequences if it spreads in the city." Mahoud gave a start, patting his forehead. "That's true. Alas, I'm really a little confused." Knowing the consequences if a strange virus broke out in the city, Mahoud was scared and broke out in a cold sweat. "Fortunately, you reminded me. Otherwise, I'm afraid I'll become a sinner." "Mahoud, that's why I said we won't leave. Now you know you're wrong, right?" Rin Xiling hummed. "Sir Ma, this woman definitely didn't think about this. At most, she didn't want to leave the crime scene. Well, you go back to the house first. See if there's any alcohol or radix isatitis in there. If you can rub it in, and eat it. Anyway, don't drink the boiled water. Drink the bottled mineral water." Mahoud quickly said, "I'll talk to Wu Qiushui again and see when the ship will arrive. This virus may break out. I have to call back and report it." "Go ahead." Luochio nodded. Mahoud patted Luochio's shoulder without saying anything. He was too happy that his nephew was spirited. Finally, Mahoud glanced at Rin Xiling and said, "You're happy. You always want to make big news. This time, you're really lucky." Sub-editor Rin said naturally and gracefully, "Thank you." Mahoud shook his head and left, feeling worried. Almost all of the villagers were kept in a holiday house by Cuckoo. Several policemen with guns were guarding the exits of the holiday house. Time passed slowly. Some villagers who contacted the village by phone began to squat in the corner, sobbing quietly. Luaccio looked at the blue star flowers in the yard and the girl squatting beside the yard. Ian seemed to have noticed Luaccio's arrival, but she didn't stand up or turn her head. She just stared at the blue star flowers. The girl suddenly said, "Do you know? The flower language of blue star flowers is mutual trust. No matter what kind of flowers it is matched with, it can always find its own place. It won't be overshadowed by other flowers and won't be ignored easily." She stood up, and at some point in time, she had plucked a flower in her hand. The blue flower stayed on the girl's soft palm. Ian said softly, "It's like how people get along with each other. Everyone is unique. But because it is unique, different sparks will burst out when people meet and interact with each other, and different stories will happen." There was a sad but beautiful smile on the little girl's face. "But if we want to get along, if we want to burst forth with sparks, we need to have mutual trust. If we can't trust each other, then it's easy to be troubled by some small things. We worry blindly, suspect each other, don't trust each other, or even just for ourselves." "Did you plant it?" Luaccio asked suddenly. The girl said indifferently, "My grandpa planted it. He said it was my grandma's favorite flower, so he planted it in the yard." Luaccio nodded. He squatted down, picking one and putting it in his palm. Then he reached out to the girl, but the girl shook her head, stepping back. A step of distrust. Louis Chaoxing's eyes were full of panic. At first, it was the patient's family members, then the people outside the clinic. They all fell down one by one. That horrible disease was exposed at a very fast speed. The pedestrians on the street and people further away seemed to be spreading. He didn't know the extent of the spread and how many people in Louis village were in a panic, because he himself started to suffer from this horrible disease. Louis Chaoxing felt that he was losing his consciousness. He had difficulty breathing and a strong sense of nausea. Even his face turned pale. His whole body was alternating between hot and cold. He gritted his teeth and looked at his fingers that were starting to stiffen. He couldn't care about anything else and could only struggle to find his way into his office and lock the door. "Doctor, help us. Help me." Even though Louis Chaoxing could still hear the cries for help outside the door, he had no time to care about them. He began to rummage through the cabinets in the office, overturning a file cabinet full of various documents to the ground and finding an iron box from it. Louis Chaoxing's hands and feet were extremely stiff. He opened the box clumsily. There were syringes and some small bottles inside. Louis Chaoxing's hands were trembling. He felt that he was racing against time. He mixed the liquid in the small bottles and injected it into the syringe. He bit the yellow rubber band with his mouth. He didn't care that the blood vessels were not fully exposed, and he used iodine to disinfect it. He directly inserted the needle into his arm. He was still panting violently, but he seemed to be getting better. But the growth of those horrible horny things on his fingers seemed to have slowed down a lot. But the panic in his eyes didn't subside, because he knew better than anyone that the injection could only suppress the disease for a short time. Louis Chaoxing hurriedly fished out the phone from his white coat. After a short while, he said in an angry voice, "Didn't you say that we only need to kill Luo Iu and those who were involved in that case? Why is the whole village poisoned now?" A few seconds later, Louis Chaoxing didn't seem to get a satisfactory answer. He became angrier. "Give me back the antidote. If you don't give me the antidote, I'll perish together with you. Don't forget, your father is still hiding here." "Haha, do you think I don't dare to do that? I've been infected. What else do you think I don't dare to do? I don't care. If you don't come, I'll go there myself." Louis Chaoxing roared at the phone. But at this time, he suddenly heard some noise. It came from an iron cabinet in the office. The cabinet began to shake, and the sound of smashing came from inside. The next second, the door of the iron cabinet was knocked open. Because of this, the people inside also rolled out. "You, how did you wake up so quickly?" "I've increased the dosage of the tranquilizer." Louis Chaoxing looked at Louis Hai, who stood up from the ground. His face was filled with panic. Louis Hai patted his head, seeming to be a little dizzy. But he looked at Louis Chaoxing from head to toe, Looking at those suppressed but still existing symptoms, he frowned at once. "Who are you talking to?" Louis Hai walked to Louis Chaosheng, asking coldly. Louis Chaosheng moved his lips, feeling that Louis Chaosheng's face was unusually ferocious and terrifying. Chapter 236. Genius 1. Second, remember love divided by little? This is a wonderful novel for you to read. What's going on here? Momo frowned, looking around the holiday house. Love, go little say. Chu with his vision, it wasn't hard to see that there were people guarding the holiday house. And they weren't ordinary people, but people who were paid by the government. Momo couldn't help hesitating. People who were paid by the government were the kind of people that Taoists like him didn't like to deal with, because dealing with them would result in a collision with the country's will. For Taoists, once they got in touch with the country's will, it was like karma transfer in Taoism, and it was very difficult to deal with. Therefore, the secret commandment of the cultivation world was to avoid people who were fed by the government, if possible. The young Taoist master of Dragon Tiger Mountain was hesitating, but Luo Ayu didn't think so. Compared to this unknown person, even though he was her savior, she was more willing to believe in these policemen who were paid by the government. Although she didn't know where these policemen came from, since they were policemen, her safety was guaranteed. She couldn't be wrong about this. Without saying a word, Luo Ayu ran out of her hiding place and ran towards a policeman in the resort. She shouted, "Officer, save me! Officer, help!" Momo couldn't bear to see that the villagers of Louis Village treated human lives like grass. But this young Taoist master of Dragon Tiger Mountain really hated this woman. Seeing Luo Ayu talking to the policeman, Momo made a decision secretly. He bypassed the two people, climbing over the wall and sneaking into the holiday house. He wasn't reckless this time. He just wanted to figure out the relationship between Louis Village and that mysterious senior. It should be fine if I don't confront him directly, probably. In the end, the little girl took a deep breath. She didn't want to talk about the blue star flower anymore. Instead, she said, "I don't know how you left, but this is my business. I don't like anyone interfering. Love, go little say, don't care what your plan is." Luochio retracted his hand, and the blue star also entered his palm. "I was entrusted by others, so I have to do my part." Louis Ian gave a start, and the doubt in her eyes grew stronger. The little girl looked at the man cautiously. She didn't know why the man didn't tell the truth to the police after knowing that she was the one behind all this. From the contact between Luochio and the police, they should be very familiar with each other and have a close relationship. But it was clear that he had deliberately concealed it. Who asked you to help me? You just need to know and trust that I'm here to help you." Luochio shook his head and said, "Tell me, other than making the villagers sick, what else do you want to do?" Louis Yun's face changed slightly, and she lost her voice. It's you who made all the villagers sick? Why are you doing this?" Luochio asked curiously. "Then why are you doing this? In other words, what was the difference between making a few dozen people fall ill and making an entire village fall ill? Killing one person is killing. Killing 10 people is also killing. What's the difference? Taking revenge on one person is revenge. Taking revenge on 10 people is also revenge. What's the difference? Is there any difference between one person's pain and the whole village's pain? Or is it just child's play that you've planned so many things?" Louis Iyun lowered her head, and her whole body slightly trembled. She felt that these problems had existed a long time ago before she made this decision. The little girl took a deep breath. Those problems that she didn't deliberately avoid and try not to think about, now she had to make a choice. There's no difference. She looked at Luochio, repeating, "Originally, there's no difference." But she intended to say something. But she was interrupted. You're all here." It was Lizzie who ran out in a hurry. "Iyun, your mother is back. Officer, it's these people. These bastards. Catch them one by one, and throw them in jail for 8 to 10 years. No, it's better not to let them out for the rest of their lives. I'm telling you, these bastards caught me this morning and wanted to throw me off the cliff." Luo Ayu's sharp, scolding voice was heard when they walked into the house. Because Ma Howd was here, As long as Mahoud's black pistol was here, the villagers who were scolded all lowered their heads and kept silent. Luocio looked at Mahoud's unhappy expression. Maybe it was because this landlady's sound wave skill was too powerful, so he couldn't resist it. "Madam, please calm down. We'll do it according to the law. Don't worry," Mahoud said perfunctorily. If he could convict them casually, he would arrest them without hesitation. No matter what, a crime was a crime, but this kind of collective behavior was very troublesome. Arrest all of them and convict them? That was impossible. At most, they would capture a few leaders. The rest would have to be released, even if they didn't want to. There were simply too many people. "How can I calm down? I almost died." But Luo Iu was still screaming. Mahoud rolled his eyes, looking at Ren Xiling for help. Ren Xiling pretended not to see it. She didn't want to deal with this landlady, but she couldn't resist Mahoud's pleading. "Hey Yun, come here. Come and see your mother. She's safe." All of a sudden, their gazes fell on the little girl. Luo Yun had to look at Luo Iu, walking to her side. Luo Iu pulled Luo Yun, looking at Mahoud. "Come here, officer. This is also a certification. This is my daughter. She's the same as this young Miss Ren. She saw everything with her own eyes. Ask her if I'm telling the truth or not." "Mom, calm down. The officers will do it," Luo Yun whispered. Luo Iu got angry, pushing Luo Yun to the ground, roaring, "Calm down? How can I calm down? Are you helping me? Stand aside if you don't. Don't be an eyesore." The little girl lay on the ground, lowering her head, saying nothing. Yi came to Luocio quietly, whispering something to him. Luocio nodded and didn't do anything else. Boss Luo just said in a low voice, "It's time to end it. She's your daughter. How can you treat her like this?" Ren Xiling helped Luo Yun up, glaring at Luo Iu. Luo Iu snorted coldly and said, "You get it clear, I don't have any blood relations with this guy. Do you think I'm her mother? Ever since I was young, this guy has never smiled at me even once. So what if she doesn't smile?" Luo Iu's sharp words were followed by a rough voice. A middle-aged man appeared at the entrance of the room in a hurry, eyes wide open. "Sir Ma, this gentleman said he's the boss here, so we can't stop him." A young police officer came to the room, and he brought a patient here. "What?" Mahoud gave a start. "Control him." But LV Hai walked straight to Luo Iu, as if he didn't see anyone here. He stared at Luo Iu fiercely and said in a low voice, "I ask you, what's wrong with not laughing?" Luo Iu only scolded this guy after she got married. He had never treated her like this. She frowned. "Luo Hai, don't you dare speak loudly again. You good for nothing. When I was taken away this morning, where did you die? You didn't say anything when your wife was taken away, but you yelled at me when you came back? Fine. Are you a man or not?" Slap. The boss of the resort slapped his wife's face hard. This slap was so loud and violent that the people who heard it felt a faint pain in their cheeks, not to mention Luo Iu, who bore the brunt of it. At this moment, she was seeing stars from the slap. You dare to slap me?" Luo Iu covered her face. She didn't know if it was because of anger or fear, but she couldn't speak clearly. Slap. But Luo Hai slapped Luo Iu's other cheek again, loud and merciless. "I'm telling you, if you behave atrociously here again, I'll smash your mouth. I mean it." Luo Hai raised his hand again. Luo Iu was so scared that her face turned pale. This was the first time she saw such a terrifying Luo Hai in the past 10 years. Luo Iu stepped back to Sir Ma subconsciously, grabbing Sir Ma's arm. "Officer, you heard it. You saw it. You want to slap me, kill me." "Madam, it's your family's business. We can't interfere," Mahoud said in an official tone. "How about you try to communicate with each other? Everything will prosper if the family is harmonious, a couple will." "You, Mahoud," Sir Ma whistled, walking away with his hands clasped behind his back. At this moment, Luo Hai put down his hand, closing his eyes and taking a deep breath. Then he came to Luo Yun. He looked at his daughter and didn't say anything. He just looked at her quietly. Under Luo Hai's gaze, Luo Yun lowered her head slowly, seeming to be frightened and scared. Luo Hai sighed suddenly. touching Louis Yun's cheek. The girl raised her head abruptly, with a trace of fear in her eyes. Chapter 237. Genius remembers love in 1 second /small. Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. It's all because of me. Louis Hai didn't seem to be the boss of the resort anymore. He admitted his crime and looked at the crowd. He seemed to be afraid that they didn't hear him clearly, but he also wanted to leave a clearer impression on those who heard him. Luoqiu thought he wouldn't forget Louis Hai's appearance at this moment. That kind of calmness, composure, and firmness. Wu Qiushui's face flashed with a trace of surprise, but he soon remembered the legend in the village. Vaguely, he connected the two things together. He was the first one to react. Why did you do this, Louis Hai? Why did you do this? This should be a kind of acquiescence. Sirma frowned. He was used to considering all possibilities, so he wouldn't believe it easily. But it was different if there was enough evidence. From the very beginning, since Louis Hai came in, the villagers looked at Louis Hai in a different way. They knew Louis Hai was the only one in the village, but they didn't have a good relationship with him. He lived in the old house on the hillside with his family and seldom went down the mountain to enter the village. He drove his sampan to the sea to catch fish and planted vegetables in the open space behind the resort. He only entered the village to buy some necessities. Later, Luoqiu came, so these jobs became Luoqiu's job. Those who saw Louis Hai occasionally had the impression that this man's beard was always messy, and the smell of alcohol on him was always stronger than the smell of the sea. He was an alcoholic, but now he was a criminal. His eyes were enough to make people fearful. He seemed to be another person, so he spoke. He sneered, with a trace of contempt in his eyes. He looked around. Those villagers who were caught by his eyes were scared and lowered their heads. Why? There's no reason, Louis Hai said indifferently. But people in this village have almost forgotten the evil deeds they had done and the conscience they had lost that year. I might as well just mention it. We did something wrong in the past, but we were only instigated by others. But you, an elderly man said agitatedly. If there's anything, come at us. They wanted to fight and kill. But you've actually lost your mind and made the entire village suffer. What did those kids do wrong? Louis Hai sneered again. What did I do wrong 45 years ago? My family is safe and sound. And then what? Instigated by others? Therefore, you can just pretend that you have washed your hands clean and live a stable life here with many children and grandchildren, right? For so many years, we felt uneasy. Do you really think we have it easy? Then why do you want to hold human sacrifice again? Louis Hai said with disdain, listen, it's the second time you've been feeling uneasy and uncomfortable all these years. Just today, just this morning, right here. I'll fight you to the death. The old man immediately rushed up, but Louis Hai shouted, get out. The old man was so scared that his face turned pale. He retreated 2 steps and fell to the ground. Louis Hai scolded loudly. Look, this is what you call uneasiness. This is what you call not having a good time. There's no need to reason with you. Once the reason is not on your side, what do you think? Violence. Yourselves. A group of villagers were scolded into silence and lowered their heads. They were really uncomfortable now. They couldn't make a sound and had no place to speak. No. Louis Hai, did you say you spread the virus? Wu Qiushui was clear about the history of this village. He soon realized something wrong. How old were you 45 years ago? Could it be that you were also the one who spread the virus back then? Louis Hai said indifferently. Ask Louis Qiaosheng about this. I brought him here. Ma Hao frowned, winking at the young policeman outside the door. Soon, Louis Qiaosheng was brought in. His hands had already turned grayish-black, as if he couldn't move. Someone was holding his hands and dragging him in. Louis Qiaosheng's hair was almost wet with sweat. His eyelids were half closed. He looked extremely weak. Dr. Louis, you're also infected? Wu Qiushui was shocked. He intended to approach, but stopped after 2 steps. Asking in surprise, Louis Hai said, what do you know? Louis Qiaosheng moved his lips, looking hesitant. Louis Hai sneered. Tell me, Dr. Louis, do you still want to hide what you've done? Or I'll tell you for you. Louis Qiaosheng glanced at Louis Hai in fright. He lowered his head, saying in a trembling voice that virus was discovered by me at first. What? Impossible. The villagers were also shocked by his words and looked at Louis Chaosheng in disbelief. No one in Louis village didn't know this doctor. When he was young, he went out to study medicine. After he finished his studies, he came back to the village. That small clinic had saved countless people. How could anyone believe that such a person who helped the world was actually related to that demonic virus? And he was the one who discovered it. You discovered it? Mahoud gave a start, frowning. How old are you? How old were you 45 years ago? Yes, I discovered it after I came back from studying medicine. Louis Chaosheng didn't dare to look at Sir Ma, who was full of righteousness. How did you discover it? Why did you discover it? What Mahoud was concerned about was naturally different. If it was a virus that had existed for decades and was still in such a remote place, there must be a lot of things involved behind it. It might be a big problem if it was not handled properly. I am. Louis Chaosheng looked at Louis Hai, hesitating. Louis Hai snorted. You don't dare to say it? I'll tell you for you. Because you're the illegitimate son of the old female immortal. Louis Chaosheng was the illegitimate son of the old female immortal Huang. This bombshell news made the villagers open their mouths in disbelief. It was really unbelievable. Impossible. Chaosheng is my uncle's son. I attended his wedding when he was 1 month old. Louis Hai, don't talk nonsense. Liu Hai snorted coldly and said, whether it's nonsense or not, let him say it himself. Louis Chaosheng, don't waste time if you don't want to die. Louis Chaosheng quivered, lowering his head. I'm indeed the son of that woman. That year, she gave birth to me secretly in the house on the mountain. At that time, 7th grandfather's grandson didn't know how to cry, so he brought him here and asked her to wake him up. It was at that time that she switched the two of us, because she knew that with her identity, she didn't get married and had an affair with someone else. She would lose everything. So that's why. Louis Chaosheng looked at the old man who helped him, saying painfully, I can't choose my own life. I didn't know it until later. The old man trembled with anger, but still didn't want to believe it. Say it. Who's the one who had an affair with that bitch? Louis Chaosheng lowered his head, saying nothing. When everyone fixed their eyes on Louis Chaosheng, an angry voice was heard. Grandpa, a bow. Where are you going? Louis Hai grabbed Grandpa, a bow's collar, dragging him out and throwing him to the ground, snorting. Your son is like this. Why don't you take a good look at him? Grandpa, a bow, who was thrown to the ground, stood up in a flurry. Seeing everyone looking at him, he felt like he was surrounded by enemies. He screamed, Louis Hai, isn't it enough that you've harmed our village? Are you going to slander me? Are you going to deny it? Louis Hai sneered. He suddenly pressed Grandpa, a bow, to the ground and tore his clothes. You shameless bastard. Grandpa, a bow's clothes were torn apart, revealing a cyan black tattoo on his back. However, as he aged, this tattoo had long wrinkled up. Even so, one could still see the appearance of this tattoo clearly. It was a rather ferocious demon's appearance. Li Zi was shocked when the tattoo appeared. This is the tattoo of a jealous ghost. You know? Ren Xiling gaped, looking at Li Zi. Li Zi nodded, saying uneasily, well, this is the favorite tattoo of the Imperial Army, especially the soldiers in wartime. This, all of a sudden, everyone looked at Grandpa a bow. Louis Hai sneered, Grandpa a bow. No, Takaru Sakai. What else do you want to say? Takaru Sakai's face turned ashen as he closed his eyes. He no longer struggled and laid on the ground, motionless. Japanese? Japanese? The villagers couldn't believe it. How could Grandpa Heibao be a Japanese? Louis Hai said, before the war, the Japanese sent a troop to our village to carry out a secret experiment. It wasn't a curse that made the villagers sick, but something made by the Japanese. I think most of the old people know it. At that time, some people disappeared every few days. Later, we knew they were caught by the Japanese. Back then, the real Grandpa, a Bao, was also captured and tortured to death. After a few years, the Japanese couldn't keep the secret base anymore. So, this guy ran out with the virus. He was seriously injured and escaped here, but was found by that old witch. That old witch wasn't a good person. This guy promised her gold, silver, and jewelry, so she hid him. After recuperating for a long time, they had a discussion after winning the war. Finally, Takaru Sakai lived on as Grandpa Abao. Until now. Yin 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 Yin. Chapter 238. Genius remembers love in 1 second / small. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. 45 years ago, Takaru Sakai hid in Louis Village, but he always hoped that the Imperial Army would come back. Therefore, he kept guarding the virus produced in the lab, waiting for the day of counterattack. However, as the days passed, Takaru Sakai knew that the day of his dreams would not come. He considered committing seppuku, but he did not have the courage to stab himself in the abdomen with a knife and pull it out. In the end, he convinced himself that the day would come. He saw the greed of old immortal Huang. So he used the knowledge he learned in the military school to help this woman to play tricks in Louis Village. At first, she just wanted to fool the people in Louis Village, then she gradually brainwashed them. Humph! In order to deify that old witch, you conspire to spread the virus that you brought out, creating a legend of the sea god that didn't exist at all. You sacrifice people alive. Of course, the effect would be used after the sacrifice, because you're the one controlling it. If you stop, then naturally, no one will be infected. Grandpa Bao. Takaru Sakai could only remain silent facing Louis Hai's accusation. Looking at his appearance, even if they didn't want to believe him, they had no choice but to. So, it's like this, what did we do that year? Sinful, 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 sinful. Those old people covered their faces and cried bitterly. They didn't dare to look at Louis Hai, Louis Yun, or the people here. They only thought of kneeling down, kowtowing to Louis Hai, crying bitterly. Louis Hai, we're sorry for your family. We deserve to die. If you want to kill someone, then kill us old bastards. Please, I beg you, let those juniors go. These sins don't belong to them. They're still young. They still have lives. I'm sorry. We deserve to die. Louis Hai, let them go. I beg you. Louis Hai looked at these people, smiling sadly. They're still young. They still have lives? Back then, I cried. I knelt all the way up from the bottom of the sea cliff. I cried until my throat was torn. I knelt in front of you, kowtowing one by one. Did you ever let me go, let my mother go? The elders didn't say anything and just kept kowtowing. The middle-aged, robust, and young people behind them all lowered their heads. Which family in Louis Village dared to say that they had never discussed Louis Hai's family? The atmosphere of the entire village was not fond of this family. They had been influenced by what they saw and heard all these years. Had they ever called this man from the same village, who had the same surname, brother or uncle? Nothing at all. Liu Hai angrily pointed at Takaru Sakai. Everything started because of you. Old bastard, how dare you still live in peace? Takaru Sakai looked very calm. After removing Grandpa Abao's coat, this old man seemed to regain some of his old self. Louis Hai, you don't have to say anything. That's right. I made a fool of this village. But so what? If it weren't for your ignorance, if it weren't for your selfishness, would I have done so much? If you don't have a guilty conscience, why are you suspicious, mistrustful, and cruel? But Louis Hai, don't think you can. All of a sudden, Louis Hai punched Takaru Sakai's face. This punch directly hit Takaru Sakai's mouth. This was a fist filled with strength, and it was an old and frail body. With this punch, Takaru Sakai's teeth seemed to have fallen out his mouth. But Louis Hai didn't seem to be satisfied yet. He pressed Takaru Sakai and punched him in the face again and again. 1 punch, 2 punches, 3 punches, until Ma Hao asked someone to hold Louis Hai. Sir Ma, this old man fainted. Ma Hao nodded. He felt something was wrong, but couldn't tell what was wrong. But no matter Louis Chaosheng or Takaru Sakai, they both admitted what happened that year. So, there was nothing to say. Louis Hai held a grudge and discovered Louis Chaosheng's and Takaru Sakai's secret. So, he used this as a threat to take revenge on the whole village. This was a good reason. Louis Hai, you bastard. Unexpectedly, Luo Iu said with hatred, if you want to take revenge on these bastards, then go ahead. I was almost thrown off the cliff because of you. A night as husband and wife means endless devotion for the rest of your life. How dare you treat me like this? You're a bastard. I'm not a bastard, and I'm not a good person. Since you married me, have you ever been considered a wife? I've had enough of your disgusting character, beating and scolding my family members. I've had enough of you. These people didn't throw you off the cliff. You've used up all your good fortune today. You. Luo Ayu was so angry that she gasped. Officer, you've seen it. This guy is a murderer, right? Arrest him. It's better to shoot him. I don't need you to teach me how to do things. Ma Hao snorted. Are you a policeman, or we are? Almost at the same time, Louis Chaoxing looked at Louis Hai, imploring, Brother Louis, I've promised you, I've told you everything. Please, give me the antidote. There was an antidote. There was an antidote. No matter which side they were on, they all looked at Louis Hai. At this time, Louis Chaoxing also kowtowed. Brother Louis, I know I deserve to die. It's my fault for being greedy. After I came back, Takaru Sakai told me what happened that year, but I didn't expose it immediately. Instead, I helped him continue to study the virus because of his greed, but I made the antidote by accident. I can't make it anymore. Please give it back to me. Looking at Louis Chaoxing's imploring, Ma Hao said in a low voice, Louis Hai, since you've turned yourself in and know what you've done, give me the antidote. I know that you have resentment in your heart, but those young ones are innocent. Even these old people should be punished by the law. Don't be so stubborn. Besides, think about your daughter. Do you want her to live the rest of her life with the name of her father being a murderer? Louis Hai moved his lips as if he was struggling. He took a deep breath, looking up. After a long time, he slowly turned his head to look at Louis Yun. Unknowingly, the tears on the little girl's face had already streaked down. Louis Hai smiled. Yun, the antidote is hidden in the place where I usually hide my wine. Go and get it. The officer is right. It's my fault. I shouldn't let you bear the blame. And take good care of Grandpa. Dad, don't do this. Louis Yun kept shaking her head, crying out loud. Are you going or not? Louis Hai opened his eyes wide. I'll bang my head against the wall and die here. He was very open, very open. It was as if he wanted to take in all of his daughter in front of him. Louis Hai shouted again, go. The girl lowered her head, covering her mouth, rushing out of the room. When Louis Yun came back, she was holding a 15 centimeters long test tube with some transparent liquid in it. Louis Yun held it with both hands, lowering her head, walking in step by step. Louis Hai reached out his hand, saying softly, give it to me. Everyone looked at the thing in the girl's hand, afraid that she would drop it on the ground. They didn't even dare to breathe. Louis Yun lowered her head. It was very, very low, but she stopped in her tracks and hugged the test tube tightly in front of her chest. Dad, I'm sorry, I won't hand it over. Yun, listen to me. Louis Hai said softly. You're just a kid, don't be capricious. Yeah, little girl, give the antidote. Ma Hao also chimed in. Before anyone dies, even if your father is guilty, he can be given a lighter sentence. If he's too slow, the consequences will be severe. Louis Yun shook her head, retreating step by step. The tear stains on her face became clearer. She looked at Louis Hai, shaking her head. It's not like this, not like this, it's not like this at all. What are you talking about? Give it to me. Louis Hai yelled, rushing forward to grab the test tube in Louis Yun's hand. Unexpectedly, Louis Yun suddenly said, don't come here, or I'll smash it on the ground. Yun, the girl said sadly, Dad, I can't forgive him. I really can't. I can't do it. Please don't plead guilty for me. Yun, don't talk nonsense. Don't be impulsive. It's not like this, it's not like this. Louis Yun shook her head. She sniffed hard and stared hard. Her white neck was stiff and slightly red from excitement. She looked at the people in the room, and her eyes were filled with shocking resentment. The little girl suddenly pointed her finger at Luo Ayu and said sternly, First of all, don't blame me. This woman deserves to die. Dad, do you deserve what she did behind your back? What did you say? What did I do? Luo Ayu screamed. Louis Yun said angrily, Don't think I don't know the dirty things between you and the village head. Every time you went to the village to buy things, didn't you hide with the village head and have a good time? You're talking nonsense. That year, Louis Yun sneered, The people in the village felt sorry for us, so they discussed and gave us all the nearby hills, thinking it was a compensation. You're such a fickle woman. If we didn't have so much land, would you marry us? The village head is not a good person. He has been coveting our land. You two did such a good thing secretly. That day, after you had a good time, were you discussing how to kill my dad and my grandpa, and then swallowing our land? You're talking nonsense. I didn't. Luo Ayu's face turned pale. Louis Iyun sneered. Dad and you have slept in separate rooms since a few years ago. Then tell me, whose child is the father of the child in your stomach? Unless you abort it, who can you hide it from in 1 or 2 months? Luo Ayu covered her lower abdomen subconsciously. Louis Yun said angrily, You fed my grandpa with slow-acting poison every day. Do you think I don't know? If I didn't change it secretly, you would have succeeded, right? Take a look at the medicine you hid under the bed. Luo Ayu suddenly quivered and wanted to rush out of the door. But she couldn't escape from the 2 young policemen who guarded the door and was caught back easily. She still wanted to struggle and beat them ferociously until the 2 policemen had no choice but to pin her to the wall. Louis Iyun suddenly laughed. The little girl laughed horribly, tilting her head and widening her eyes. Didn't you always curse my grandma to die early? Then I'll let you experience my grandma's pain. I'll let you die early, but it's a pity it's all in vain. Louis Iyun smiled bitterly. I've been waiting for a chance to let everyone in the village experience the pain. The ugly things 45 years ago shouldn't be covered up like this. These people shouldn't live peacefully like this. I finally got the chance. I knew that this bitch had always wanted to develop the resort properly, so I suggested that she find some reporters to interview her. It didn't matter who they were. As long as they came, she would have something to write about. They won't write about the resort, but the crime 45 years ago. They'll write about the things you people threw away. They'll write about the evil deeds of Louis Chaosheng and Takaru Sakai. I'll let the whole Louis village be blamed by the world. I'll let you suffer for the rest of your life. Your descendants, none of them will be able to raise their heads. You'll be murderers forever. Facing Louis Iyun's accusation and what she said, everyone deeply felt the horror of this little girl. Even Ren Xiling felt chills all over her body. She couldn't imagine what kind of hatred made this little girl go this far. Even from the moment she came to this place, she was already part of this little girl's revenge plan. It was too horrible. Louis Chaosheng screamed miserably, foaming at the mouth, saying painfully, Antidote, give me the antidote. Louis Hai, you promised me you'll give me the antidote. You promised me. As long as I cooperate with you and let you bear all these, you'll make her hand over the antidote. Louis Hai, save me. I don't want to die. Louis Hai suddenly became depressed. He looked at Louis Iyun painfully, saying in a hoarse voice, Iyun, why is your hatred stronger than mine? Louis Iyun shed tears. She slowly turned around, unbuttoned her clothes, and exposed her back. At first, it was her shoulders, smooth and tender, full of the youthful aura of a young girl. But looking down, there were hideous and terrifying scars that looked like spider webs. It was so ghastly. It made people's hearts twitch and twist when they saw it. It was so uncomfortable. Why? Louis Iyun said sorrowfully, Dad, do you know how those who are the same age and those who are older treat me? They said I'm a freak. They heard from their families that my grandma is the wife of the sea god, but she's also a sea monster. They said I'm a monster's child. Do you know they caught me, saying they wanted to peel off my skin to see if I'm different from them? Louis Iyun suddenly lost her expression, saying in a cold voice, At first, they cut my arm with a knife. When they saw my blood was red, they said they wanted to see my bones. Then they burned me with fire, then covered my head and pressed it under the water. Maybe it's not exciting enough. Then let's play something more exciting. 2 people caught my feet. One used a pair of pliers to peel off my toenails one by one. You were very happy. You were very happy when you saw me screaming there. Who asked me to be the descendant of a monster, right? There are even more. Do you want to hear what those so-called descendants of yours, those so-called descendants who are still alive, look like? The tears on Louis Yun's face had dried. She put on her clothes again. There seemed to be an extremely cold light in the little girl's eyes. Under her gaze, all the fresh hearts inexplicably felt uncomfortable at this moment. How many things had she experienced to freeze such a young and youthful heart into such a lifeless state? I can't say it. Once I do, I'll bear more. Louis Yun mocked herself. I'm also a coward. But why do these people treat me like this? Why would there be such a rumor? I know. It must be that the people of this village, in order to make themselves feel better, in order to not let their descendants know what ugly things they had done, vaguely distorted the events of that year. You. Louis Ian pointed at the villagers who kept silent out of fear. How cold are your hearts? I won't forgive you. Never. Louis Ian took a deep breath. The little girl's face was full of ferocious color. Ma Howd made a gesture secretly. The two young policemen nodded secretly. They moved their feet slowly, intending to pounce on Louis Ian, but Louis Ian suddenly opened her mouth. Don't come over. She opened her mouth wide, and an extremely ear-piercing voice suddenly rang out. It was as if their heads had been pierced. Under this ear-piercing sound, everyone covered their ears in pain and fell to the ground in pain. The sharp screams continued. In just a few seconds, one by one, they fell to the ground and fainted. Seeing that everyone had fallen to the ground, Louis Ian slowly walked to Louis Hai's side. She lowered her head and held her father's head, tidying up his messy hair. The little girl said softly, Dad, take good care of Grandpa. The little girl took a deep breath, putting him down gently and standing up. Suddenly, Louis Ian turned around abruptly, her eyes sharp. There was another person who didn't fall down. A person who wasn't here at the beginning, but suddenly appeared here. A person she had seen before. The one she saw before. The passenger with blonde hair who came here on a stormy night. Momo. Momo frowned, glancing at the senior who fell to the ground. Was this guy pretending to be dead? It's impossible for him to pass out with that kind of broken voice. He didn't know what the senior was planning to do, but he had his own principles and principles. After escorting Luo Ayu back, he hid in the resort, so naturally, he heard everything that happened here clearly. Listening to the little girl's bitter experience, he was also very angry. He almost couldn't hold back the impulse to beat her up. But being angry was one thing, and this little girl leaving with the antidote was another thing. Give me the antidote, don't make the same mistake again. Momo sighed. Beasts are a very strange species. Hatred can give beasts great power, but what comes with it is loss. If you don't turn back, you'll be devoured by your monster nature. I don't know what you're talking about. Louis Ian was vigilant, but it's impossible for me to forgive these people. Momo's eyes glowed with golden light, shouting in a deep voice, since you're so stubborn, I have to take action. Momo, the successor of the Taoist of Dragon Tiger Mountain, will kill you right here. He threw the suitcase in his hand into the air, and it opened in an instant. A large number of yellow talismans rushed out of the suitcase. One by one, they faintly carried the sound of wind and thunder, and began to transform into fierce golden tigers. Louis Yun raised her head. Her ears became slightly sharper, and her fingernails sharper. Her teeth also became sharper and sharper, just like a polished sawtooth. Kill evil. Momo shouted. Several golden tigers rushed to Louis Yun at the same time. Louis Yun uttered the harsh sound again, which blocked a fierce tiger's attack. But it couldn't stop more golden tigers. At this moment, Momo's face turned ruddy. Those golden tigers bumped into Louis Yun's body in a split second. She couldn't resist. Her body was like a kite with a broken string. She broke through the wall and fell into the courtyard of the holiday home outside the house. She fell into the sea of blue star flowers. When Momo planned to chase after her, Louis Yun stood up, running away quickly. Want to escape. Momo didn't care about the senior's plan. He was in a dilemma. The monster wasn't hard to deal with, but the senior's mind was hard to deal with. But he had to bite the bullet. Anyway, it was right to take the antidote. The room became quiet all of a sudden. The club boss and the club servant girl slowly stood up at this time. Luo Chio glanced at Li Zi, who was lying beside Renziling. The servant girl understood what he meant. She quietly came to Lizzie and quickly stretched out her finger to touch Lizzie's forehead. Lizzie's eyelids fluttered, and then she fainted. Luaccio carried Renziling, putting her on the wall. After sitting down, she looked outside the room, saying softly, "Take Louis High and his son. Let's go to hear the sea cliff. We should be able to fulfill Louis Buhai's request." Yin 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 PS1. Well, it's the capricious Zhang again. So those who subscribe to Zhang are true lovers. PS2. Since it's true love, it's not too much to give some recommendations, monthly votes and tips, right? Underscore, smiley face, 3 angle underscore. I feel like I'm going to become a salted fish. Chapter 239. It should have existed since Louis Village existed in this place. The old man said that there was a god in the sea. It was benevolent and universal. It looked after the village. It kept the village peaceful and the fishermen could harvest. Was that true? Since Louis Buhai was very young, he had been longing for the sea. He longed for the sea that he could walk into every day and watch the sun rise and the moon set every day. When it was peaceful, he would make waves, especially when the sun was setting. He always liked to sit on the beach alone. He didn't know a lot of principles and didn't know many characters. He only knew how to write his own name, but he always thought about what was in the sea. Until that day, at the moment of sunset, the waves washed her to Louis Buhai. His thoughts seemed to stop at once. What was in the sea? The young fisherman only knew that this woman, washed by the waves, attracted him deeply. The woman woke up after being in a coma for 3 days and 3 nights. Who are you? Who am I? This was the moment when their eyes met so many years ago. Louis Buhai seemed to see the profundity of the sea in her eyes. She forgot everything, but remembered him. He had everything in the past, but he secretly told himself that it was enough to remember her in the future. Shuayer, you were washed up by the sea, so you were called Shu? He said with a silly smile. He was still the name of the small fishing village, but she became the wife of the young fisherman. Life was very simple, but it changed from one person to 2 people. At least they were not lonely anymore. Shuayer gave birth to a child for him. After several years, he was still illiterate, so he simply removed the middle part of his name and gave it to his son. He still looked at the woman who had become his wife with a silly smile, saying, "You are Shuayer. He is higher. Just make a word. Then it becomes the sea." How unpleasant it sounds. So the simple family had a new life. So, no matter how simple it was, there was a little liveliness. Later, he didn't know when it started, but this woman who had forgotten everything but was surrounded by plain happiness showed a trace of strangeness in her eyes. Her gaze was still deep, but he could feel that there was something flowing slowly under this calmness. He knew that she liked those little blue flowers, so he planted a lot of them. One day, she told him that she did not belong to this place. She said that she was beginning to remember things. She also said that she was an unlucky person. The little life in the family was already 7 years old, and he had also matured. He wanted to protect this home, so he told her that if she didn't belong here, then he would accompany her to leave this place. Anyway, when they got married, no one in the village approved of it. It didn't matter whether they kept it or not. So he continued to ask her with a silly smile, "Where do you want to go?" She looked at the sea in a daze. That evening, she squatted by the sea, barefoot, and whispered that if she could, she wanted to become a fish and swim to the sea. Louis Buhai laughed. "Idiot! How can a person turn into a fish? But if you want to go out to sea, then I will build a ship that can accommodate the whole family." He drew a big arc with his hands in front of him and said with a smile, "A big ship." She snuggled in her husband's arms, smiling, watching the sunset disappear at the end of the horizon. The sea breeze was blowing. This should be the place where everything started. The construction measures to turn Here the Sea Cliff into a scenic spot had long disappeared when the cliff collapsed not long ago. Now, it was just an ordinary cliff. "There's no road ahead. Give me the antidote." Momo's fingers were wrapped with golden light. "As long as you give me the antidote, I can ignore this matter. But you have to promise me that I will pull out the monster's root from your body." Louis Yun looked at the sea. She had been looking at the sea since she came here. She opened her hands, facing the sea. She seemed not to hear Momo's words, just gazing at the distance. Momo didn't dare to act rashly. He was really afraid that the girl would throw the test tube down the cliff. It was the sea and the rocks below. He didn't have the confidence to save it. Of course, it didn't need to be so troublesome. As long as the girl used a little strength, the test tube would break directly. Louis Iyun turned around. The girl's pupils even turned light blue, the color of the sea. She looked at Momo, telling him, "Don't come here, I won't promise you. Those people are guilty, but they don't deserve to die." Momo took a deep breath. The girl's expression turned painful. She covered her forehead with her palm, suddenly yelling, "Then who will help me? You? They don't deserve to die, so you should let them go. What about me? Who will let me go?" "Calm down." Momo frowned. "Don't let it defeat you." Momo frowned. "Don't let it defeat you. Calm down. What else can you do besides telling me to calm down?" Louis Yun's eyes turned sharp. Her cherry blossom red lips had now turned an inky blue. "I'm a monster, so no matter what I do, it's wrong, right? Those people are human beings, so no matter what they do, they can be forgiven, right? You're just like those people who only know how to talk about benevolence, righteousness, and morality. That's all." A sharp voice came out of Louis Iyun's mouth. Momo thought it was terrible. The girl was demonizing at a terrifying speed. She might not be able to turn back, and the monster nature would swallow her whole. Momo sighed in his heart, saying in a low voice, "Since you don't listen to me, don't blame me." He activated the talisman made by the tiger's soul, and several golden tigers rushed to Louis Iyun at an extremely fast speed. The young Taoist master of Dragon Tiger Mountain was completely different from the one dozens of minutes ago. The speed of the golden tigers suddenly increased, surpassing Louis Iyun's reaction speed. Several golden tigers easily bit the girl's legs and hands. The sharp teeth that pierced deeply into the little girl's body caused her to let out a shrill cry of pain. "I'm asking you again, are you going to turn back or not?" Momo shouted. However, what he got in return was an even more intense and venomous gaze. Momo took a deep breath. Without hesitation, he pinched a scarlet talisman between two fingers, pushing it out slowly. A bolt of lightning shot out from the scarlet talisman. It was a thunderbolt. If it fell on Louis Iyun, it would definitely kill this little demon who hadn't matured yet. Momo closed his eyes, saying in a low voice, "I'm sorry." The sea breeze was still strong. Momo opened his eyes slowly. She might have become a corpse. No, she didn't become a corpse, and the thunderbolt didn't hurt her at all. Momo opened his eyes wide, because that mysterious senior was standing behind the girl, blocking the thunderbolt for her. "You?" Momo squeezed out a voice from his throat. Although that thunderbolt was not his strongest Dao technique, it had been easily blocked. He did not see how it had been blocked, but looking at this senior's unscathed appearance, it could be assumed that it was not as difficult as swatting a mosquito. "Thank you for your hard work." Luochio looked at Momo, nodding. Momo frowned, asking in astonishment, "What's wrong?" Luochio shook his head, not intending to explain. He couldn't say, "You're good," forcing Louis Iyun to escape and forcing her to break out her monster nature. "You're a great help, saving a lot of effort." Luochio reached out his hand, approaching those golden tigers. The golden tigers that locked Louis Iyun seemed to have tightened their bodies. Unexpectedly, this scary guy just stretched out his hand and touched the head of one of the golden tigers, as if he was stroking a domestic cat. "Thank you for your hard work. Go back." They turned into yellow talismans one by one, stacked together, and flew towards Momo. This caused the young heavenly master of Mount Longhu to be astonished. In theory, this talisman could only be activated by a secret technique. But at this time, Louis Iyun, who was released, suddenly screamed. She stretched out her arm, and her nails turned into claws, clawing at Luochio without saying anything. However, before she could get close to him, her entire body was flipped over. Then, her body made an abnormally heavy contact with the ground. Bang! The little girl's body smashed into the ground, creating a pit that was neither big nor small. When she recovered her sight, she saw an extremely beautiful woman standing in front of her. She was thrown down by this woman. But it wasn't over yet. Miss Maid's heavy palm pressed on the girl's abdomen. Louis Iyun spat out a mouthful of dark green blood, as if her internal organs were broken. When Louis Iyun thought she was going to die, Miss Maid had returned to Luochio, standing behind him. Louis Iyun spat out blood. Her legs were trembling. She struggled to stand up, staring at this young man with fear and anger, gritting her teeth. "Why didn't you kill me? I told you. I'm here to help you." Luochio said, "The demon nature in your body has accumulated to the point of eruption, and it has devoured your mind seriously. Of course, it's not difficult to eradicate it, but..." Turning his eyes, Boss Luo didn't continue, but shook his head. "I'm fine. I don't need your help." Louis Ian pointed at Momo angrily, but stared at Luochio. "You're just like this guy." Suddenly, a voice came. It was Louis Hai's voice, a sad and heavy voice. "Iyun, let go." Louis Iyun followed the voice, seeing Louis Hai holding Louis Buhai, walking over slowly. Louis Buhai was still muddle-headed. He walked slowly with the help of others. "Dad, Grandpa." Louis Iyun stepped back, shaking her head with a painful expression. Why did you come? Don't come over. Don't look at me. Don't look at me. Why can't I look at you? No matter what you've become, you're still my daughter." Louis Hai took a deep breath. "I dare to look at my daughter. So, Ian, let go. Hatred doesn't belong to you." Louis Ian held her head, stepping back step by step. Her eyes were wavering. She looked at Louis Hai. Her voice became sharp. "Why? Why can you forgive those people? Why? For so many years. Why didn't you say anything? Why?" Louis Hai took a deep breath. "Because the one who created this virus is not anyone, but your grandmother." The little girl suddenly stopped. Her eyes widened. She moved her lips and shook her head slightly. Slowly, she shook her head. No. You lied to me. You lied to me. You lied to me." Louis Hai said bitterly. "I didn't lie to you. It's true. Your grandpa told me personally. That year, your grandma was one of the people involved in the plan, even a member of the research and development team. Later on, the laboratory was attacked, and your grandmother managed to escape. However, she accidentally fell into the sea and lost her memory. In the end, she was washed to us. Your grandpa married her and gave birth to me. But," Louis Hai said helplessly, "but not only your grandma escaped, Takaru Sakai also escaped. He even kept the virus in the lab. You should know what happened later. Until the infected people appeared in the village, your grandma was stimulated and recovered all of a sudden. She thought the virus might have drifted here with her when she fell into the sea, and then someone opened it by accident. So she blamed herself, but she didn't know that Takaru Sakai, who was in the same lab with her, also came here secretly and hid in old Immortal Huang's house." Louis Hai shook his head. "He was injured and never left old Immortal Huang's house. And after your grandma married your grandpa, they moved to the edge of the village. They didn't meet each other and didn't know each other's existence. Until the villagers broke into our house and took your grandma away." Louis Hai looked at Louis Yun. "Your grandma thought she deserved it, so she didn't hate anyone until the end." "She didn't hate? How can we hate? But can't we? All these years, the person who suffered the most should be your grandfather." "It's not true. It's not true," Louis Hai said painfully. "If those who killed your grandma were murderers, then we're also the descendants of sinners." "Kid, let go, it's my fault. I thought it's good for you that I didn't tell you these. But I didn't know you've suffered so much secretly. When I woke up in the clinic, I heard Louis Hai talking to you on the phone. After I forced him to tell me the truth, I realized it's all my fault." Louis Ian lowered her head, sobbing heavily. Colorless tears flowed out from her deep blue eyes. Why did I do this? Why did I do this?" "Iyun!" Louis Hai shouted. Louis Iyun raised her head slowly, revealing a sad but beautiful smile. She said softly, "Dad, I don't blame you. But, I can go back. I'm sorry." Louis Iyun held her head in pain, letting out the sharpest scream so far. Her eyes were filled with tears of blood that were different from the color of a human's heart. She suddenly turned around and charged toward the cliff, jumping down. Luocio narrowed his eyes, patting on Louis Buhai's back. At that moment, Louis Buhai's turbid eyes brightened up. His body also seemed to be pushed by a huge force, and he suddenly flew out. Louis Buhai caught Louis Yun's arm successfully. Louis Hai quivered, flying over and catching Louis Buhai's waist. Louis Yun wanted to resist, but she stopped when she saw her grandpa's eyes, which seemed to be full of vigor again. "Grandpa, I have a bad memory," Louis Buhai said softly. "I saw you crying secretly but forgot it soon. I saw you rubbing alcohol secretly but forgot it soon. I also saw your wound, but I still forgot it. But how can I forget it? You're my granddaughter. Grandpa, save me." Louis crouched on the cliff, crying loudly when the wind blew over. The blue pupils gradually disappeared. Those sharp teeth also became flat. When Louis Buhai pulled her up bit by bit, the demonized features faded away from her body bit by bit. But she was still in LV Buhai's arms. Her cries were as clear and loud as a baby. Momo looked at the black gas coming out from Louis Yun's body, saying unbelievably, "She's almost demonized completely, but it can be reversed. She has a human part, doesn't she? Human soul is a wonderful thing. A little light is enough to dispel all the darkness in the heart." Luocio's voice sounded in Momo's ears. He looked up at the senior, opening his mouth, but didn't say anything. But this young Taoist master of Dragon Tiger Mountain had the thought of eliminating it since it couldn't be reversed on the cliff of this small fishing village. Momo lowered his head deeply. He heaved a sigh of relief and sat down with his legs crossed, eyes closed. There was a faint golden light flowing under his skin. Luocio looked at Momo in surprise, asking curiously, "Is this the rare epiphany that Tianzi mentioned?" Miss Maid said joyfully, "Now we can look forward to Momo's arrival." The club boss, who always felt that Miss Maid's way of thinking was different from his, didn't argue with her. After a while, Louis Yun stopped crying. With tears in her eyes, she slowly stood up with the support of her father and grandfather. She took a deep breath, walking towards Luocio, handing over the antidote to Luocio. Boss Luo took over the test tube, saying, "It's easy for me to take it from you. But if you hand it to me, you'll really let it go. Do you understand?" Louis Yun shook her head, then nodded. "Why do you help me?" she asked suddenly. Luocio said indifferently, "Just take it as I'm bored." At the edge of the cliff, Louis Buhai threw a grateful look, then slowly closed his eyes and fell down. "Dad! Grandpa!" Louis Yun rushed to Louis Buhai, calling the old man with Louis Hai in a flurry. "Grandpa!" The little girl leaned on Louis Buhai. Louis Hai took a deep breath. "Your grandpa might have a momentary lucidity before death at his age. These years, let him rest in peace. To be able to see you let go of the hatred in your heart. Wasn't this a form of relief for him? You're too sad." At night, Rin Xiling turned on the desk lamp. She looked at Lizzie, who was in deep sleep, shaking her head and smiling. She picked up a cup of hot tea and took a sip to get rid of the chill on her body. Then, she placed her hands on the keyboard of the laptop and gently tapped on it. When I woke up, the others also woke up one after another. I looked at the little girl and her father, sitting there quietly. The test tube that could save the entire village was also lying quietly on the coffee table. However, we have no way of knowing what exactly happened. Mahout actually wanted to ask clearly, but I know his character. This guy with a big beer belly didn't want to open the scar in the little girl's heart. But he was very annoyed. But it didn't matter because he had Takaru Sakai and Louis Chaoshan to vent his anger for him. I think after bringing these two guys back, Mahout would be busy for a long time. After all, the problem of the fishing village was a historical problem, which was enough for him to be in a terrible fix. It was as if something was pushing us. We woke up one by one and kept silent as we stared at the test tube. We didn't ask why, as if it was an agreement. Until now, I still feel it was incredible. Those villagers who were saved agreed not to accuse Louis Hai or Louis Yun. It was as if, after this experience, the ugliness buried in their hearts had been completely cleansed. I watched as the villagers bowed quietly outside the resort and left quietly. Louis High and Louis Ian didn't come out. The estrangement didn't disappear because of this incident. But since Louis High's family chose to forgive them, this estrangement should fade away with time. Maybe it will take a long time, maybe it will be the little girl's offspring, but one day, this resort on the hillside will have more guests. They will address the descendants of the holiday homes as brothers or sisters. The only pity is that the old man of the resort passed away. According to the custom of the village, the old man's body should be cremated on the same day. Of course, this doesn't conform to the current degree of death, but this place is remote. That secretary didn't insist on the custom of this village. I think after this incident, he might not dare to do it anymore. I wonder if this old man remembered anything before his death. I don't think I'll ever forget what happened in this small fishing village. What happened here before, I'll never forget it. After finishing the sentence, Run Xiling heaved a sigh of relief, dragging this chapter into a folder called Run Xiling's Anecdotes. This wasn't something she could publish. Boy, hurry up and have a baby. Run Xiling closed her eyes slowly. Before going to sleep, she smiled faintly. I've prepared a lot of interesting stories for my grandson. The sleeping sub-editor probably hoped that she could have a good dream. She gradually fell asleep. She didn't know that the boy who could have a baby was now at the beach of the fishing village. There were the boss of the club, the maid of the club, and Louis Buhai, who had been cremated. Thank you. Louis Buhai looked at Luochio. The old man was quite quiet. After a lifetime of hardships, the illiterate young fisherman who could only sit on the beach in a daze had a profound look in his eyes. We're just fulfilling your request, guest. Anyway, Louis Buhai shook his head. It's enough. He turned his head, looking at the night sky without any brilliant stars. The sea under the night sky looked dark. The old man walked into the sea step by step. The sea water went over his legs, his waist, and his chest. When the sea water almost went over his shoulders, the old man smiled slowly, as if he saw the woman who floated over from the beach many years ago. You said you hoped to become a fish and swim to the sea. Maybe you really did swim to the sea. So, I'm here for you, Shuika. When the seawater completely submerged him, the old man from the small fishing village by the sea turned into a big blue fish and finally disappeared into the sea. Luochio nodded towards the sea, saying softly, Guest, thank you for coming. Boss Luo was still enjoying the sea breeze, but Mississippi Maid, who was accompanying him, suddenly looked back. When the footsteps on the beach gradually became clear, the voice of the young master of Dragon Tiger Mountain sounded. Louis Buhai faked his death. It was arranged by you. Luochio turned around. Wouldn't it be better to say, you know too much? Momo frowned. Why can Louis Buhai become a fish? No, he returned to his original body after demonization. He shouldn't live for long. Maybe he can't even swim out of the sea. I always thought that Louis Iyun could demonize because of the atavism. I thought the woman who rushed over from the beach was a monster, or at least had the bloodline of a monster. But Louis Buhai, who are you? Why can you turn a human into a monster? I didn't turn him into a monster. Luochio shook his head. As for why, guess, do you want to know? Momo gave a start. At this moment, he seemed to feel the terrifying feeling he had when they fought for the first time from the senior. This made his heart beat so violently that he stepped back subconsciously. Momo shook his head. My intuition tells me it'll be troublesome. Luochio smiled. Momo took a deep breath, looking at the sea silently. Suddenly, he said, You said that human soul is wonderful. A little light can drive away all the darkness in one's heart. But my master also said that the coldest thing is human's heart. He looked at Luochio. So what on earth is human's heart? I don't know. I'm also looking for it. Luochio shook his head, but he also looked at the sea. However, the coldest thing is human's heart. The warmest thing is human's heart. The coldest thing is human's heart. The warmest thing is human's heart. Momo murmured, closing his eyes and sitting on the seaside with his legs crossed. The golden light that was released once seemed to be stronger. Looking at Miss Maid's satisfied eyes, Luochio said softly, Go back. Several days ago, in the office of Louis Chaoxing's small clinic, Miss Maid found a document from the innermost part of the locked cabinet. So Miss Maid showed a faint smile. She looked at Luaccio, saying softly, "Master, there's something interesting here." Something interesting? The club owner took the document, opening it and reading it. This was Louis Chowshing's discovery since he started his medical career in this small fishing village. He realized that some of the villagers had 6 fewer ribs than normal people, but they were still alive and healthy. Some were even healthier than others. Chapter 240. When the shutter was pressed, Lizzie asked with confusion, "Sister Ren, what are you taking pictures of?" Lizzie really didn't know why Ren Xiling was still taking pictures at this time. She was taking pictures of the villagers who were cleaning up the collapsed mud on the road. "I should be able to clear a path today, right? If you're bored, you can go to the village to have a walk." Lizzie pouted. "What's there to see? Not many people come out of the village." The antidote had been handed out, and according to Louis Chowshing's instructions, it was diluted and injected into the infected villagers one by one. The infected villagers' bodies also began to gradually recover. But it needed a process, so most of them could only stay at home to recuperate. They didn't leave immediately because, according to Louis Chowshing, the antidote was made by him without any doubt. He had been studying the formula, but couldn't realize it. Mahoud felt that the formula made by the doctor was not careful enough. He was afraid that the virus in the village hadn't been completely cleared, so he contacted a medical team to quarantine the village temporarily. After checking and confirming that there were no loopholes, he considered letting Luaccio and others leave. So they stayed for a few more days. "Hey, how do they transport the sand to the mountain?" Lizzie watched the villagers put the sand and stones into the cart, but they didn't throw them into the sea or pile them up in the forest. "This seems to be going up the sea cliff." Ren Xiling was still pressing the shutter. It seemed that only she knew what the lens was capturing. She changed the angle and squatted down. While adjusting the wide-angle lens, she said, "Wu Qiushui said that after the discussion, the villagers planned to use the soil and stones to make a statue." "A statue?" "A statue of the sea god's wife," Ren Xiling said indifferently. "It's for worship." Lizzie opened her mouth and raised her head, looking at the cliff. She stroked her hair, which was blown by the sea breeze. Suddenly, Lizzie said, "Sister Ren, let me help you. Don't say that you're hungry. You're doing me a big favor." Ren Xiling rolled her eyes. "Don't be like this." Lizzie felt wronged. According to Louis Chowshing's confession, all the explosives that he used to blow up the cliff have been found. There should be nothing left. Inside the small clinic, Mahoud looked at the contents of the box. "These are all homemade explosives." Mahoud shook his head and sighed. Louis Chowshing is a talent. He researched the antidote by himself. Unfortunately, he took the wrong path. The young police officer nodded in agreement. He suddenly asked, "But are we just going to let this go? Other than the one who scared himself to death." Mahoud snorted coldly. "None of the infected people in this village died. The collective will of this village is not to pursue this matter. To be honest, if they pursue this matter to the end, I will also pursue what they did decades ago. Even if the time limit to pursue responsibility is passed, I will let the whole society spit on these people to death. This..." Calm down." The young police officer wiped his cold sweat and said, "But this way, the procedure seems a bit. This is called being flexible." Mahoud snorted. "Learn from me." "You? How can you?" "Young people, it's inevitable to make mistakes occasionally. But if they can repent, why don't we give them a chance? Do we have to kill them once and for all? We are law enforcers. But for whom do we enforce the law? If we don't give her a chance, who else can give her a chance to repent? The law is nothing more than human feelings. The existence of the law is to punish and restrain, but also to give the criminals a convenient door to start all over again." "I understand." The young police officer looked like he had learned something. Mahoud glared at him. "You know nothing. I'm going to retire soon. Don't learn from me. Hurry up and take these things away." "I know." The young police officer quickly carried the box and ran out. Seeing the young police officer leaving in a hurry, sighed, "But only when the criminals are willing to open this door, it has the meaning of existence." Ma Howd suddenly spat. Looking at this small clinic, pooh, if they don't want to open it, I'll shoot them. With a beer belly, Officer Ma Howd, who would retire in a few years, still had a hot temper. In the lawn observation deck connected to the holiday house, Luaccio was sitting on a wooden bench near the guardrail, facing the sea. She lowered her head, drawing on the bench with a pen. Beside her was a teapot and teacups. The servant girl was standing beside her. This was what Louis Yun saw. Although she knew they came here together with Renziling and Lizzie, she also knew they seemed to be from different worlds. Even though she had experienced the incident on the Hear the Sea cliff, the little girl still had awe rather than gratitude when facing them. The little girl hesitated, finally walking over. Luo, Mr. Luo, you can Mississippi ye. Do you want some snacks? Luaccio didn't raise her head. You made cookies, they taste good. No need, I'm not hungry. Louis Yun quickly waved her hands. If she felt it was hard to get close to him when she received him a few days ago, then now it was a huge sense of oppression. I heard the boss's wife left. Louis Yun nodded. Mom, she couldn't stay here any longer. Everyone in the village knows about her relationship with the village head. Last night, he left quietly and didn't take anything with him. My dad said he married her just to take care of me. Now just let her go. She's at this age. She won't have a good life in the future. Luo Ayu's question was Louis Hai's private matter. Luaccio didn't have the interest to inquire further. At this time, Luaccio stopped, looking at Louis Yun. Yu Yi attacked you twice that day, dispersing the foundation of the demon in you. And you also got rid of the demon in you. Basically, it won't relapse. But you'd better be careful. Excessive pain may cause the demon in you to reignite. I know. Luaccio smiled. Are your wounds better? Louis Yun touched her belly subconsciously. It's fine if I don't move. I see. Luaccio nodded, standing up and glancing at the little girl. He didn't say anything, but walked back to the holiday house. The little girl looked at the things on the bench, saying, Mr. Luo, you didn't take your things. Your grandpa asked me to give it to you. Take it. Grandpa. The little girl gave a start, picking up the things on the bench subconsciously. It was a sketch on white paper. In fact, it wasn't a simple white paper, but a yellow drawing paper. It was one of the many drawing papers in her grandpa's room. It was just that those paintings that only had a simple outline without a face had now become complete, and that was the appearance of the little girl. On the drawing paper, there was a freshly picked blue star flower planted in the courtyard. Louis Yun read the words beside the sketch, silently, the words written by the mysterious man. The lifespan of blue star flower is only one day. The flowers seen every day are different from yesterday's. They're all new flowers, but their roots are still the same as yesterday's. Blooming again after decaying, death, new life, one day after another. So the blue star flower has a second language. Embrace the present. Looking at the sea in front, the little girl hugged the blue star flower in her palm. She walked 2 steps forward, standing closer to the guardrail. The little girl closed her eyes, holding the flower in her palm, gently with her fingers closed, as if praying. Then she hummed softly. That was the song of the mysterious song that was recorded and put on the internet. But this time, she didn't sing it, only humming the melody of the song. There was no wonderful power to make people absent-minded. Maybe it was because there were no lyrics, or maybe it was because she couldn't sing those lyrics anymore. But, Chapter 241. If it was accompanied by music, this scene would be particularly suitable to be used as material for a music video. What happened in the fishing village was really a big shock to them. Even now, there was still an indescribable feeling. But haven't we forgotten about something? Yes, on the day before leaving, sub-editor and almost pulled the official couple to the beach in a way like pulling. Well, Rin Xiling's official couple. See, sunshine, beach, it's summer, and we booked the whole place. Rin Xiling sighed, facing the sea. Of course no one. There are not many tourists in the resort, and they are all infected. They're still recuperating. Lizzie laughed. However, the feeling of having 4 people on such a big beach was indeed very good. Stop talking. Rin Xiling laughed, taking off her coat while stepping on the sea on the beach. As a matter of fact, sub-editor Run, who had a 35D figure, had always been a proud existence in the office of the magazine. But now she chose a pink two-piece swimsuit. The scene of running was too impactful, so Lizzie didn't feel like watching it. Especially when she wore a lemon-yellow tube-style swimsuit. She looked like a junior high school student. Sure enough, there is no harm without comparison. Anyway, she's also a monster. What are you doing? Come down. Run Xiling had already entered the sea with a happy face. Lizzie looked back subconsciously. Luaccio was inserting the rented parasol and spreading the cloth for people to sit on. It seemed that he didn't intend to go into the water at all, but he seemed to say something to Yuyi. After Yuyi nodded, she walked over with a smile. Today, the servant girl who simply tied her long hair into a ponytail with a rubber band slowly took off the white thin windbreaker on her upper body. It was still a white swimsuit inside. If Sister Rin was said to be harmful to Lizzie, then this person who didn't talk much but seemed to be very easy to talk to and was very quiet was a critical hit to Lizzie, right? I didn't expect this. Lizzie muttered to herself. This girl who was full of classical beauty was actually wearing a bikini with straps. The bonnets around her waist and pelvis swayed gently as she walked with her almost perfectly proportioned legs. The only thing that covered the most mysterious part of a woman was a small piece of white fabric. Miss Lizzie, aren't you going into the water? Just call me Lizzie. Lizzie laughed dryly. The critical hit was still ongoing, so she could only smile embarrassedly and say, Go into the water, go into the water, go into the water. She couldn't possibly say that even as a woman, she was stunned, right? Then, let's get into the water, Lizzie. Yuyi smiled and held Lizzie's hand. Watching the three of them playing in the water, Luaccio revealed a smile as he took out a bottle of sparkling water from the small incubator and drank it. After that, he covered his feet and arms with his clothes and covered his face with the hat that Yuyi brought. After that, he lay down and became motionless. Not long after, they went ashore. Rin Xiling came to Luaccio discontentedly. Boy, anyway, we came to the seaside. Aren't you bored sleeping here? No response. Rin Xiling frowned and lifted the hat directly. But what she saw was only a head made of sand. This was not Luaccio, but a human figure made of sand. What the? When did this damn guy make a sandman? Where is he? Rin Xiling looked around, but she couldn't see anyone. He likes to walk around, so he should be wandering somewhere else. Yi said softly, I know this. Rin Xiling said angrily, but you're here as a boyfriend. It's irresponsible to leave like this. Miss Maid said softly, it doesn't matter as long as you can accompany me. What a good girl. There's such a girl in the world. That damn guy must be so lucky. So sub-editor Run grabbed Yuye's hand, saying intimately, Come on, I'll teach you how to control your husband. You'll be bullied if you look like this. Let me tell you, girls, when necessary, can ride it. Puff. Sister Ren, what the hell are you teaching her? Lizzie opened her mouth. She couldn't listen to it anymore. Jumping on the messy reefs easily, just like the martial arts masters in the movies. After a few jumps, Luaccio lost interest. It was right below the Hear the Sea cliff. The cliff collapsed once every 45 years. After 45 years, Louis Chaosheng also blew up the cliff once under the instruction of Louis Yin. The rocks that had rolled down the mountain twice, in addition to the reefs that had originally existed here, made this place appear incomparably complicated. When the waves crashed, they were even more ferocious. Not to mention a dinghy, even a good swimmer wouldn't dare to break into this place. Luaccio considered the report about Louis Village as the last dessert before leaving the village. He had walked around the village these days without finding anything. Finally, he considered the bottom of the cliff, which was difficult to approach. It was just past noon. The seawater hadn't gone down yet. Luaccio looked at the bare bottom of the cliff. It seemed that he didn't find anything here. Shaking his head, Boss Luo was about to leave, but suddenly he frowned. He found that one part of the cliff was not naturally formed. There was a protruding part that was already covered with moss. It should be the huge rock that rolled down from the mountain 45 years ago. Taking a deep breath, Luo Chio stretched out his palm and made a moving motion in the air. The rock, which weighed about 20 to 30 tons, slowly moved to the side. The seawater began to pour in here, and soon returned to its original height. Luaccio walked on the horizontal surface, the seawater in the dozens of square meters separated naturally. Finally, he found a reason why the seawater was sucked in. Under the sea level, there was a cave with a width of about 10 meters. Luaccio's eyes brightened, as if he found something interesting. He walked into the cave under the seawater. The cave was like a passage leading to the deep bottom of the mountain. After walking for about 30 meters, he came to the end of the passage. Luaccio raised his head. The passage seemed to be a natural U-shape. The base of the mountain here is empty. He left the U-shaped passage. The seawater poured in again. It was dark here, but unexpectedly, he didn't feel the air was turbid. There should be a gap for airflow somewhere. He turned on the lighting function of the mobile phone, and this place could be seen clearly. Then Luaccio saw a turtle in front of him. An abnormally huge tortoise. It should be a sea turtle, right? Luaccio walked around this huge turtle. The passage just now seemed to be completely built according to the turtle's body shape. It couldn't pass through normally if it was a little narrower. Finally, Luaccio came to the front of this sea turtle. This guy's head was almost the size of an adult. Then, a pair of huge black eyes suddenly appeared at this time. The moment the huge turtle's eyes opened, Luaccio had a feeling of sinking into the sea. It wasn't discomfort, but a burst of coolness made him feel comfortable. This huge turtle looked at Luaccio, and Luaccio also looked at its eyes. "Who are you?" Luaccio could hear such a voice. It wasn't a combination of words in any language he already knew, but more like a fragment of information. Luaccio suddenly asked curiously, "You know spiritual communication? What is spiritual communication?" "I don't know, I just want to know." "You haven't answered me. Who are you? Why did you disturb my sleep?" The club boss, who rarely talked with people, was unexpectedly talkative with creatures other than humans. "Me? I was just curious and walked around, and then accidentally found this place. To be honest, it's the first time I saw a huge turtle like you. Are you a monster?" This huge turtle said, "What is a monster? Probably a variety of animals after gaining wisdom, and then a second form change. For example, a creature like me. I can't." Luaccio gave a start, but he was very interested to meet a turtle that could communicate with spiritual communication. So he asked, "Where did you come from? You've been here for a long time. By the way, how old are you?" "I don't know how old I am." The huge sea turtle slowly said in a very slow tone, "At the very beginning, I remember that there should be a lot of big guys on the ground." "Big guys? What do they look like?" Luaccio frowned. Some had big heads, strong hind limbs, but small forelimbs. By the way, their teeth were particularly sharp, and they liked to be alone. Only when mating would there be a pair. The other appearances were similar, but the size was different. Some had longer necks, and some could even fly in the sky. By the way, they all had strong tails. Boss Luo listened and was stunned. He quickly turned on his phone. There was still a signal bar. Soon, he found a picture on the internet and put it in front of him. "Look, is it similar to these?" "What is this?" "Well, I seem to have seen this guy before." Getting a positive answer from the huge turtle, Luaccio was really surprised. The reason for the surprise was that the picture he showed the huge turtle was a picture of a dinosaur. Moreover, it was a species called hornbill from the White Period. In other words, this huge turtle was a creature from the White Period. The White Period was a very long period, but even at the end, it was nearly 70 million years ago. Chapter 242. It was suspected to be a creature from the White Era. No matter how one looked at it, it should belong to the ancient sea turtle species of that era. Before becoming the club's new boss, Boss Luo was also a genuine paleontology student. Naturally, he understood the biological significance of discovering such an ancient sea turtle. This unimaginable vitality may be able to help humans structure the limits of life, and it may even greatly increase the lifespan of human beings, right? The rest was the genetic map research. The evolutionary process of the creatures on the third planet of the solar system was not only that. It also knew how to communicate mentally. Therefore, it was fully capable of helping humans simulate the true appearance of the White Era. It wasn't a monster, but it might have existed longer than a monster. This ancient sea turtle had clearly witnessed the great miracle of life. Luacio's interest grew. Do you have a name? Do you have any similar species? I don't have a name. The ancient sea turtle slowly said, similar species. I had them a long time ago, but they're no longer there. I have seen a lot of guys similar to me, but they're not my real kind. They're just similar in appearance. Luacio nodded. If there were still a lot of creatures like this ancient sea turtle, it was impossible for there to be no movement in the outside world over the years. In other words, this might be the last one to survive from the White Era to the present. By the way, why are you in this place? Well, sleeping? Is it strange? I have always been sleeping in this place. The ancient sea turtle said, I have changed my sleeping place many times. Once, many huge, flaming rocks suddenly fell from the sky, smashing the ground into smithereens. Even the sea became chaotic, and I had no choice but to move to another place. Once, the volcano in the sea began to erupt, and I had no choice but to leave. Another time, the entire world became very, very cold. It exceeded the limit of my endurance, and I had no choice but to find a warmer place. The ancient sea turtle kept talking about its long history of moving, but it also forgot to ask why it moved for a lot of time. It seemed that because of the long years, many of its memories had become blurred or even forgotten. Oh yes, when I moved here, it should be not long ago. I remember that at that time, a terrifying tremor suddenly came from the ground. Two very, very big things fell from the sky. Those things were too terrifying. An area was flattened in an instant. Then, like a volcanic eruption, thick smoke directly rushed into the sky. After that, whether it was the air or the sea, there was something that made me feel very uncomfortable, so I could only leave. I liked the place where I slept last time. Luacio opened his mouth. According to the ancient sea turtle's description, when it moved last time, it encountered the UA atomic bomb in Area 11. Luacio pondered for a while, but it was very weak. If he hadn't been close to the ancient sea turtle for a while, he might not have been able to detect it. He suddenly said, can you move your body a little bit? Let me see what is under you. Okay, the ancient sea turtle's personality was very gentle. It's just that it needs to move, but it's a very difficult and slow process. It's just that Luacio's patience was very good. After the ancient sea turtle completely moved away, he walked to the place where the ancient sea turtle originally pressed down. There was already a huge turtle shell indentation. Walking to the center of this indentation, Luacio squatted down, stretched out his palm, and pressed on the soil that had been pressed hard like diamond. The hard soil broke open little by little, and then a box about 40 centimeters long slowly emerged. The place where I sleep, there is such a thing? The ancient sea turtle was surprised. Luacio ignored the sea turtle's surprise for the time being, but opened the box. What was inside was a white, round, and flawless huge sphere. It was the size of a football, a pearl. This was a rare treasure in the world. Or it should be said that it was a priceless treasure. Such a huge and round pearl was bigger than the so-called Laozi's pearl that was found in the world decades ago. Laozi's pearl was irregular in shape, and this one was almost perfect in shape. The gap between the two was obvious. It's just that such a world treasure couldn't be kept in Luacio's hand for more than a minute. Luacio's finger brushed over the huge pearl, and this rare treasure that had just been born instantly shattered into countless white powder. Among these powders, Boss Luo picked up a familiar black card of the card club. At the bottom of the box containing the huge pearl, there was a wooden shelf used to hold the pearl. Turning over the bottom of the shelf, some words engraved by someone could be seen. After paying some lifespan as a price, Luacio translated these words. It was about 700 years ago. A Murloc living in the deep sea paid a huge price and brought its people to the land. Its name was Donyang, and later it added a human surname, LV. LV Donyang lived the life of a human being, feeling the warmth of the sun, giving birth to children, and reproducing with its people. It had always lived a life of being aloof from the world. My descendants, if you encounter difficulties that you can't overcome, you can break this pearl and take out the things inside. As long as you pray sincerely, you will get a response. However, one had to think twice before begging. The more things one wanted, the more valuable they would be, and the more valuable they would lose. Don't use it unless it's a matter of life and death. After reading L.V. Dongyong's last words engraved on the wooden board, if he wanted to know more about the transactions, he had to go back to the card club to check the account book. There should be some hints about this place in Louis Village, but Luo Chio played with the black card in his hand, shaking his head. Maybe it has been forgotten by later generations due to the passage of time. Therefore, the box buried here had not been discovered. In addition, this huge pearl should have some kind of isolation ability. As the boss of the card club, he could only sense it when he was close to it, not to mention ordinary people. So far, the secret of Louis Village no longer existed. Luochio smiled contentedly. But at this time, the ancient turtle suddenly said, "I think I've seen this thing before." Luochio gave a start. "You've seen it before?" "Let me think." The ancient turtle closed its eyes. Luochio waited patiently again. Until nearly 30 minutes passed, Luochio felt something wrong. This old turtle seemed to have fallen asleep again. Did I fall asleep again? Oh, I remember. I've seen this thing before. The ancient turtle didn't feel embarrassed at all, still speaking in a slow tone. "Well, speaking of which, I felt the same aura from you and that guy. No wonder I woke up from my deep sleep." "Same aura?" Luochio frowned. "Did that guy tell you his name?" "I forgot." The ancient turtle said, "That guy also gave me this thing, saying I could find that guy through it if I needed it. Then I threw it away." The ancient turtle said slowly. Luochio opened his mouth. Well, he had met people who threw away the black card in the past 2 or 3 months since he took over the club. For example, Tu Jiaqing had thrown it away at the beginning. However, the black card was a certificate. Once it was given to a customer, no matter where it was, it would eventually return to the person who needed it. Of course, the black card could also be lent to others. But Luochio didn't feel the existence of the second black card here. He looked at the ancient turtle in surprise. "Don't you have something you want for such a long time?" The ancient turtle said naturally. "That guy said he could help me realize my wish. But I don't need it. As long as I can sleep by myself. Why do I need someone to help me?" "Luochio, such a guy really exists as long as he sleeps." This was probably infinitely close to the level of having no desires. No wonder the black card that was thrown away didn't return to the ancient turtle. "If there's nothing else, I'm going to sleep." "Wait, where did you meet the guy who gave you the black card?" "Under the sea. Lemuria? The ancient civilization that is as famous as Atlantis? Does it really exist?" Luochio moved his lips, but in the end, he didn't disturb the ancient turtle's sleep. He said softly, "If I have time, I will come again to talk to you about more things." He buried the box and the black card in the soil again, restored everything here, and left along the road. Finally, he moved the boulder back to the original position and blocked the entrance. The next time he came, he didn't have to go through so much trouble. He had already remembered this position. In the following time, Ren Xiling kept a straight face. She seemed to finally remember her identity as a parent. It was just that such a parent's majesty was ultimately defeated by Boss Luo's seafood porridge and some small gifts. "What is this?" Ren Xiling looked at a big box that Luochio put out and snorted. "Don't think that I will forgive you for running away." "What? What is this?" After opening the box, he saw a lot of white powder. Luochio said, "Pearl powder. This so much. Doesn't it cost money? If I use it every day, I can't finish it in 10 years. It's cheap." "That's right. This looks like a cheap product." Ren Xiling nodded. Although it was a cheap product, she put it away very well. Luochio suddenly said, "By the way, after going back, I will leave for a while." "Where are you going?" "Russia, tourism." Yin 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 yin. Chapter 243. "Well, get closer." "Well, okay, eggplant." After the uncle successfully took the photo, he walked to Luochio with his phone and praised, Very beautiful. Your girlfriend. Thank you. Luaccio accepted the praise. He wasn't sure what was Catherine Too's reference standard when she created Yuye's body, but it was hard to find a flaw in this body that combined the advantages of the East and the West. The uncle smiled and said, "Are you a new student? Or a tourist?" Luaccio asked curiously, "Why do you say so?" The uncle, who was caught in front of the Petrov Grand Theater and came from the same country as Luaccio, smiled and said, "Because if you have been here for some time, you basically won't come back except for the normal performances. Judging from your age, you're either students or tourists." "Tourists," Luaccio said. The uncle enthusiastically introduced the surrounding places and told them some things to pay attention to with his experience of living here for nearly 10 years. "You must bring your identity card and visa with you. The police here will check your documents from time to time. If you really forget to bring them, just pretend you don't know anything. They can't do anything to you in the end. Also, if you encounter any difficulties, it is always better to find a local lawyer than the embassy." "Lawyer?" The uncle smiled and then held out a business card. The front was a description in Russian, and the back was Chinese, which Luaccio was very familiar with. "Dali Law Firm. Shin Mingjun." Looking at Luaccio holding the business card with a strange look, this uncle, Shin Mingjun, smiled and said, "I didn't mean to look for business to say the embassy is bad. Well, it's useless to say too much. If you live here for a long time, you will slowly understand. It's okay." Luaccio accepted the business card. Shin Mingjun smiled and said, "Then I won't disturb you. I have something to do." Seeing Shin Mingjun leave, Luaccio handed the business card to Yuyi. Miss Maid then put it into the leather bag in her hand. As the boss of the club, there shouldn't be anything that required the help of a lawyer. Besides, although he was completely unfamiliar with this place, he was not familiar with it at all. But the maid beside him was here. Before the club moved to his city, it had stayed in this place for a very long time. Lowering his head, Luaccio sent out the photo. This should be able to temporarily shut Ren Xiling's mouth. "Do you want to go somewhere?" Luaccio looked at Yuyi and asked. Since he came to Moscow this time to fulfill his promise to Yuyi, Luaccio decided to let Yuyi make the decision herself. "There's nowhere in particular that I want to go." Yuyi shook her head and said softly, "If there's a place that Master wants to go, Yuyi could be a qualified tour guide." Luaccio smiled and said, "If we keep going like this, we can only stay here and stare blankly at night." Yuyi thought for a while and said, "In this case, let's go to Tver Avenue. There's a good supermarket there." "Supermarket?" "Because it's almost time to prepare dinner for Master." Miss Maid smiled and said, since he became the boss of the club, Luaccio basically didn't eat outside food. But Yuyi didn't seem to intend to change this aspect of life. "Then let's go to the supermarket." Luaccio smiled and said. On the first day in Moscow, the boss of the club and Miss Maid went to the supermarket. Outside the magnificent and luxurious classical palace-style, huge building was the famous Tver Avenue. On the road that was more than 10 lanes wide, endless vehicles could be seen. This was a very prosperous place. But this kind of prosperity was completely irrelevant to Nikita. What he cared about now was how to escape from the hands of the two strong men in front of him. But the fact was that the two men forced him to the wall of the alley, one on the left and one on the right, like two mountains. For Nikita, who was thin, there seemed to be no possibility of escape no matter how he tried. "I have no money." Nikita begged for mercy. One of the strong men suddenly sneered. Without saying anything, he directly punched on Nikita's stomach. The punch made Nikita squat on the ground while covering his stomach in pain, complaining, "I really don't have extra money. I still owe the landlord 2 months' rent. I'm going to sleep on the street." The other strong man who didn't hit him sneered, "This is the territory of Boss Igor. It's not the first day you come here to make a living. If you don't pay the protection fee, get out of here." "But I really have no money," Nikita said with a dry cough. "You will have it." The strong man who hit him sneered. The muscles on his arms that had obviously been trained bulged high, and he easily pulled Nikita up. Once again, he aimed at Nikita's stomach and punched him again and again. "Stop, stop." At this time, a man in his 30s with a face full of stubble rushed in. The man had a sturdy body that was not inferior to the two strong men, and even slightly taller. He came to Nikita, and the strong man who hit him stopped. Nikita suddenly slid down the wall and sat on the ground, with some blood flowing out of his mouth. The man squatted down and glanced at Nikita, with a trace of anger flashing in his eyes. His hand clenched into a fist, but it only lasted for an instant before loosening. "Don't hit him again. I'll pay the protection fee for him." The man took a deep breath and stood up. When they got closer, they discovered that this man was actually a head taller than the two burly men. Although the two burly men were looking up at him, they clearly didn't show the slightest bit of fear. The man quickly took out his wallet. When he was about to count the banknotes, one of the strong men suddenly reached out and grabbed all the banknotes in the man's wallet, saying indifferently, "This is the amount. This is more than 3 times." The man frowned. The strong man who grabbed the money smiled and gently fanned the banknotes in his hand on the man's face. "This is the amount for helping people, especially you, haha. What? Do you want to fight? Come on. Take the money. Let's go." The man took a deep breath, and his voice became lower. The other strong man whistled, smiled disdainfully, and patted his partner's shoulder. "Next time, remember to let this guy take enough money with him." After that, the two left from the other end of the alley. The man sighed, then turned around and squatted down, looking at Nikita. "Nikita, how was it?" "Oleg, I'm sorry. This time I let you. It's okay." The man, Oleg, shook his head and said, "Can you stand up?" Nikita nodded. Although his face was painful, he still stood up in front of him. But Nikita's face was full of anger. "Oleg, you should hit them. I know that you can easily defeat these two fellows." Oleg said indifferently, "I've delivered the goods. If you don't have anything else, I'm going to pick up my son from school." Nikita still wanted to say something, but Oleg had already walked out of the alley. Nikita moved his lips and finally leaned against the wall tiredly. After a while, Nikita kicked the trash can next to him to vent his anger, and then sat down with his head in his hands. After a while, he got up and left the alley in a daze. When leaving the alley, Nikita blankly looked at the bustling street. Those luxurious sports cars passed by him from time to time, and he couldn't help showing an envious look. He also saw a particularly beautiful woman, but this woman was beside a man who was looking at the east, and they seemed to be quite intimate. Even this Oriental guy, if he has money, he can also enjoy this kind of super beauty. Money, money, money. Nikita spat out a mouthful of saliva, reluctantly withdrawing his eyes from the beautiful woman and limping away. Before entering the Yelisevsky supermarket, Luachio suddenly asked, "I heard that the gangs in Russia are very active. Are those who receive protection fees just now?" The servant girl said with many years of experience, "I'm afraid they are at most small ruffians, maybe the peripheral members of a gang, so they can only collect protection fees." Luachio nodded, walking into the supermarket. Chapter 244. When Oleg came to school, he was told that his son played truant in the last class. He didn't find out until the class was over. The teacher was about to call Oleg, but it was time to pick him up after school. Play truant? Why did he play truant? Oleg asked confusedly. The teacher had to look up to see the Siberian man clearly. He frowned and said, "Mr. Oleg, I think I should be the one to ask you this question. I remember that I have invited you twice this week to come to school, and we will talk about your son, but you seem to have not given me a formal reply." Oleg said apologetically, "I'm sorry. I'm a truck driver. I'm busy with work and can't spare time. It's my limit to pick him up on time every day." The teacher shook his head. "Sir, is there anything more important than family? I'm sorry, I'm not criticizing your way of life, but Antonio is just a child. Please care more about his emotions. Besides, I'm going to call the police because Antonio is too young. He may be in danger when he leaves school." "No need." Oleg shook his head. "I think I know where he is. So goodbye." "Mr. Oleg. Mr. Oleg." "Oh." Looking at the man who had gone away, the teacher sighed and shook his head. Finally, he watched Oleg drive the dark yellow pickup truck onto the road. Miss Maid's shopping this time was very fruitful. The two of them were strolling through the streets of Moscow, each carrying 2 large bags of things. It was time for sunset. For Luo Chio, This kind of thing of taking things home after shopping in the supermarket was basically once or twice a week, so he had long been accustomed to it. But Miss Maid felt that she shouldn't let her master do this kind of heavy work. Of course, they didn't argue. In fact, it's not bad to walk back like this. We can also see the scenery on the street. Boss Luo's mood had been very good since he came to Moscow. And Miss Maid didn't insist on it, because she knew that her new master wasn't the type of person who liked to enjoy completely. In this place of 55 degrees north latitude, even in summer, the temperature in the evening was only 20 degrees. There was no heat from the temperature, but there was heat from the people on the street. Luocio casually looked at the streets and pedestrians under the yellow setting sun. Suddenly, he stopped walking and looked at the other side of the street, as if he was thinking about something. This time, Yi had arranged everything for them to come to Moscow, including a place to stay temporarily. Although it was only a temporary residence, it was also a very exquisite apartment. As for how much it cost, Luocio felt that he didn't need to care about this kind of thing. However, this was not the direction back to the apartment. Boss Luo changed his route and headed towards the park. In the park, some women were playing with their children. There was also an old man sitting on a stool with a pipe in his mouth, looking at the sky. At this moment, a boy was sitting on the swing on one side of the building. He was carrying a backpack and sitting on the bench of the swing, but he was not swinging. The child had a head of chestnut-colored curly hair and faint freckles on his face. He was rather small. He was about 10 years old. "Do you want some?" Suddenly, the little boy heard such a voice. He looked up and saw a black-haired guy, reaching out his hand to give him a piece of chocolate. The little boy was stunned for a moment, but he quickly lowered his head and stomped his feet on the sand, causing the swing to sway. Luocio didn't seem to mind, but sat on the swing next to him. He tore the chocolate in his hand, then broke off a small piece and put it into his mouth. The moment he broke off the chocolate, the crisp sound made the little boy's eyes move over, but he quickly turned to the other side. "Well, my mood is much better. Some people say that if you eat something when you are unhappy, your mood will be better." Screech! The child's feet suddenly stopped on the sand, and the swing stopped. The child suddenly stared at Luocio fiercely. Without saying anything, he ran away. But the child didn't run far before squatting on the ground. Soon, the little boy stood up, but at this time, there was a ball of mud in his hand. The child threw the mud ball in his hand at Luocio with all his might. The mud ball almost hit Boss Luo's face. While marveling at the so-called fighting nation, Luocio slightly tilted his head, and the mud ball flew past his ear without hitting him. The little boy looked regretful, but he instantly made a face and ran toward the exit of the park without saying a word. However, he did not expect that just as he turned around, he would immediately bump into something huge and fall to the ground. He bumped into a very strong man. "Antonio, stand up," the big man suddenly said. The boy. Antonio looked up and saw the big man's appearance. He immediately lowered his head and whispered, "Dad, I'm really sorry my son is too naughty." After the introduction, the big man who claimed to be Oleg apologized in front of Luocio very politely. Even if he saw that the young man was of Oriental race, even if he had more than twice the size of the young man, he did do so. "It's okay. I started the conversation first." Luocio stood up and said, "I saw that he seemed unhappy, so I planned to treat him a chocolate. Maybe he thought I was a bad guy. Well, his awareness of precaution is actually very good. After all, he was a fighting nation, Coco." At this time, Oleg was stunned. "Are you an Oriental who grew up in the local area?" "I'm just a tourist." Luocio shook his head and said, "Well, I'm free to travel." Oleg said inconceivably, "Oh my God, your accent is great. If I close my eyes, I will definitely think you're my compatriot." Luocio smiled and said, "After all, it cost me some money to learn it, and it must have been a lot of hard work." Oleg nodded in agreement. "It was a lifespan of 5 days," Oleg said at this time. "By the way, where do you live? I can send you back as an apology." "In Moscow, state-run taxis are more expensive. Tourists like you will be cheated at any time. As for the taxi on the road, I don't think it will stop for you, even if you can pay for it." "Oh yes, I think I should eat a meal with you. It's perfect." Seeing that the other party didn't immediately agree, Oleg said with a little embarrassment. Don't worry, I'm not a bad guy. It's okay. But Luaccio smiled and said, Can we have one more person? Luaccio pointed to the servant girl who was sitting in the park pavilion and waiting at this time. Oleg looked over. What a beautiful girl. He smiled and said, No problem, but I may have to buy some ingredients first. We just bought some. If it's convenient, let's eat these for dinner. Luaccio said. It seemed that it was interesting to experience the kitchen of an ordinary foreign family. Luaccio, who suddenly changed his mind, looked at the little boy standing behind Oleg at this time. Chapter 245. This lady, don't you eat? At the dinner table, Oleg curiously looked at the girl who sat there quietly but didn't eat. By the way, this sumptuous dinner was prepared by the girl herself. To be honest, the food on this table made Oleg feel like he was in Tarandit restaurant, where the rich gathered in Moscow. Of course, the house he lived in was actually unsightly. A bachelor with a boy who was busy making a living every day basically had no spare time to clean a house. Oleg thought that in addition to the bed used for sleeping and the bathroom, the cleanest place might be this table that was often used for meals. It's okay, she's currently working out, Luaccio said as he put a piece of pickled cucumber into his mouth. Oleg was stunned. But she doesn't have to not eat. She doesn't eat afternoon. Boss Luo said softly again. God knew why this girl, who probably had a perfect figure, was still obsessed with dieting and working out. Oleg didn't continue to ask, but said, Antonio, eat slowly. Your table manners are too ugly. After all, there were guests here. Although eating heartily was a compliment to the cook, they were guests after all. Dad, if half of what you usually cook, no? If a quarter of it is delicious, it must mean that God hasn't given up on me, Antonio said abruptly. Oleg's face turned ugly at the words of the naughty child of the fighting nation. But how should he say it? Luaccio didn't really see anger from Oleg's serious face. What he felt was only Oleg's deeply hidden apology and sadness. Oleg sighed. If you remember to pray before eating, I think God will not give up on you. Antonio was stunned and patted his forehead with one hand. He quickly threw down the knife and fork in his hand, put his hands together, and closed his eyes. Our Father in heaven, may people worship your name as holy. May your kingdom come. May your will be done on earth. Although Luaccio didn't know whether the prayer would work in this process, he still asked curiously, Mr. Oleg is also a believer? Oleg shook his head. I'm not, but this child was baptized when he was born. His mother is a believer. Luaccio nodded and didn't ask anymore. There were only two kinds of situations in a family without a hostess, and it was so dirty and messy. No matter which one, it wasn't suitable to mention it on this occasion. But perhaps it was the worst kind. Luaccio's eyes fell on the small photo frame on the side of the TV cabinet in the living room. In addition to Oleg and the baby, there was also a beautiful woman with chestnut red hair. Oleg thought that this foreign young man was very good and very calm. Antonio quickly finished his prayer and began to eat heartily. During this meal, they talked about some local customs and culture. The time passed. After dinner, Oleg didn't let the servant girl wash the tableware. He hurriedly rolled up all the tableware and threw it into the basin, rolling up his sleeves. Luaccio began to carefully look at the decoration in this family. Antonio kept staring at Luaccio at this moment. The naughty child seemed to have let down his guard against this stranger after experiencing this delicious dinner. What do you do? Antonio looked up and asked the big brother, who was much taller than him. Boss Luo was looking at a piece of decoration. He gently put it down and smiled. I do business. Business? Do you sell things? The business in the child's mind was probably the shop that sold things in the shop. Well, I do sell things. What do you sell? Antonio asked curiously. Luaccio suddenly squatted down so that Antonio didn't look up at him. He smiled and said, Basically, I sell everything. As long as the customer can think of it and afford it, I can sell it. Antonio tilted his head and said, Do you sell planes? Yes. What about trains? Also. The naughty child used his finger as a gun and made an aiming action. He said excitedly, Tanks? Rockets? Cannons? Do you sell Dragunov SVD? Yes. Luaccio nodded. However, kid, You're only 10 years old. Why do you say planes, tanks, rockets, and cannons at this age? And Dragunov SVD is a sniper rifle. So the naughty child was very excited. Can you sell it to me? I have property of 8,300 rubles. Is it enough? Luaccio shook his head. Antonio lowered his head disappointedly. Luaccio stood up, reached out and patted Antonio's head, and said softly, "Remember, when you need it, you will find me. At that time, tell me what you really want to buy in." Boss Luo lowered his head and whispered something in Antonio's ear. Antonio opened his eyes wide and took a step back, looking at him with a trace of horror. Luaccio finally said, "These can be used as the transaction fee for what you want to buy. Do you understand?" With that, Luaccio stepped back in front of Antonio. Yi also walked to Luaccio's side. After a few steps, he and she suddenly disappeared in front of Antonio. Antonio opened his mouth wide and rubbed his eyes hard. After a few times, he still couldn't calm himself down. He stared blankly at the empty carpet. "Antonio, where are the two guests?" Oleg, who had just finished washing, came out of the kitchen and looked at his son and asked, "Disappeared. Antonio pointed to the place where the two disappeared, turned around, and said, "I saw them disappear here." Oleg stared blankly for a moment, then walked in front of Antonio, squatted down, and touched his head. "The Lord said, don't lie. You forgot to pray when you had dinner today, and now you lie. What do you think we should do?" "I'm serious," Anton shouted. "Antonio." Oleg took a deep breath and said in a low voice, "Today, you played truant, right? I haven't asked you about it. Why did you play truant?" Antonio clenched his small fists and didn't say a word. Oleg said, "Do you know that only bad children play truant? Do you want to be a bad child?" Antonio said, "I've grown up. I don't need to go to school. I want to do what I like." "You've grown up?" Oleg, however, shook his head. He easily grabbed Antonio's arm and lifted him up. He said calmly, "Child, do you know what I'm talking about? This is called growing up." Antonio kicked Oleg with his feet. "Let me go. Let me go. Let me go. Let me go. Coward." "What did you say?" Oleg shouted in a low voice. "Coward. You're a coward. Oleg is a coward." Slap. Oleg couldn't hold back his slap and directly slapped Antonio's face. But after this slap, Oleg was stunned and regretted very much. Antonio had been put down. He covered his cheek and fiercely pushed against his father. "Oleg, you're a coward." After the child finished speaking with a sobbing tone, he turned around and ran back to his room without another word and slammed the door shut. Oleg stood there in a daze. His lips moved and finally turned into a sigh. He took a long breath, picked up the photo frame on the TV cabinet, and slowly rubbed the glass of the photo frame. The coldness of the glass penetrated Oleg's fingers. This huge man sat on the sofa and closed his eyes. After a sumptuous dinner, the house returned to its usual desolation. The next day, Oleg opened his eyes with a headache. He drank a lot of beer here in the middle of the night. Oleg, who reeked of alcohol, pinched his forehead again and looked at the time. "It's already this late?" Oleg patted his forehead with annoyance. He didn't have time to wash himself, so he quickly stood up and said, Antonio, get up. I'll send you to school, Antonio." Oleg walked toward Antonio's room and shouted, but he couldn't get a response. He frowned and twisted the lock of the room, but it was not locked. The door was opened easily, but Antonio was not in the room. Chapter 246. "Marina, pack up your things quickly. We're going out." "Okay." Across the door, the little girl was busy packing her school bag. Her mother would send her back to school soon. But at this moment, the little girl stopped, because the window of her house was being patted by a palm at this time. The little girl tilted her head, opened the window, and saw a familiar face. "Antonio, why are you here?" Marina asked curiously. "Marina, I ran away from home." Antonio looked at Marina with a trace of pride. "Do you want to come with me?" Marina was puzzled. "But why should I run away from home with you?" "Antonio, it's wrong to run away from home. Mr. Oleg will be sad if you do this. You should go back and apologize to him." Antonio said, "Marina, I like you, so I come to you." Marina shook her head. "But I don't like you, Antonio. I like older and more mature boys." My mother is urging me. Goodbye, Antonio. I hope to see you at school. Marina, Marina. But ignoring Antonio's call, the little girl Marina quickly closed the window and pulled the curtains as well. Antonio lowered his head in disappointment. At this time, Marina had left the front of the house and explained something to her mother. What? Run away from home? Marina's mother was stunned and quickly went around the back of the house. But at this time, she could only see Antonio's back over the fence. It was too late for the lady to call, so she could not help but frown. Marina, you go and get the address book. I think I need to meet Mr. Oleg first. Okay, although the confession failed, Antonio did not seem to be sad as imagined, and his mood soon recovered. Because at this time, he was walking on the busy street. At this time, he was afraid that he would have been in school and had to sit well, waiting for the arrival of the teacher. Therefore, everything that Antonio saw and encountered at this time was novel to him. Antonio gave a happy laugh, his hands opened, and he imagined that he was flying, running on the street. He had already brought all of his property out of his house, more than 8,000 rubles. Basically, the students in the school would talk about their property, but most of them would use their property on useless toys or snacks. Those students were too childish. They didn't know how to properly use their wealth. A cup of coffee and a sandwich. He sat on the chair in the cafe. It was a place that Antonio had climbed up after a lot of hard work. More importantly, this kind of chair was for adults. Antonio felt that he was on an equal footing with the adults sitting around him. He even ordered some food from the waiter. Child, did your parents ask you to buy this? I ate it myself, Antonio said in a mature voice. God knows how the shop assistant felt about his mature voice. The shop assistant frowned and said, Child, please believe me. Coffee is not suitable for you. A serving of milk gives you more than a cup of coffee. Also, are you alone? Where are your parents? He had seen the boy come in by himself and climb up the high stool, so he could not help but be a little more careful. Just give me a cup of coffee and a sandwich. Antonio grabbed some coins and put them on the counter. The shop assistant thought for a while and then nodded. But he soon made a phone call quietly. Hello, officer, this is number 12, XX Street. A child just came to my shop. It seems to be a person. Okay, I'll keep an eye on him. Come here quickly. Antonio's action of running away from home only lasted for 3 hours, and then it was completely declared a failure. A sheriff was making a phone call, while another sheriff was looking at Antonio and said, We're informing your father. He'll come and pick you up soon. Antonio leaned against the door of the police car, not saying a word. The sheriff squatted down patiently and asked, Why did you run away from home? Did your father beat you? Antonio suddenly said, Officer, I want to go to the toilet. I have a stomachache. The sheriff thought for a while and then grabbed Antonio's hand and went back to the coffee shop until he was in front of the toilet and told him, Remember to wash your hands. Antonio nodded with a well-behaved look. Soon after, Oleg hurried in and asked with a bad face, Sheriff, where's my son? He's inside. The sheriff patted the toilet door. Child, you should come out. Your father has arrived. He only patted it twice, but there was no response. Oleg frowned and twisted the lock of the door directly. The locked door was directly twisted by the big man's wrist. The sheriff didn't have time to marvel at the big man's wrist strength, but just looked at the open door and the empty toilet compartment. Where's he? The sheriff was surprised. Oleg sighed, pointing to the small window. He climbed out. Child, you can't go in here. This is for adults. Even if you have money, you can't go in here. And what's the phone number of your parents? Child. Didn't your parents tell you that underage people can't smoke? Child. Why are you wandering in the street alone? Where are your parents? Are you lost? Child. Antonio suddenly felt that there was no place for him to go. Why? Why did people everywhere always ask about his parents? He was clearly able to protect himself. Antonio didn't know where he was anymore. He only knew that whenever someone walked towards him curiously, he didn't need to quickly throw them aside. Otherwise, the scene that happened in the coffee shop in the morning was likely to happen again. This time, Antonio felt that he might not be so lucky to climb out of the toilet. But once he thought of what happened in the morning, Antonio regretted that he should have taken the things he bought from a coffee shop. "Where's this place?" Antonio not only couldn't see the restaurant, but also a convenience store. He felt unbearably hungry. "Should I go back like this? I've grown up. Remember, when you need me, you'll find me." Such words suddenly rang in Antonio's mind. He remembered the two people who came to his house last night, the two people who magically disappeared. Antonio looked around. He kept turning his eyes. This seemed to be the factory area. God knows how he came to this place. But it didn't matter. What Antonio cared about now was whether what the big brother said last night was true or not. "Where are you? Where are you?" Antonio clasped his hands over his mouth and shouted, "Come out! Where are you? Come out! Do you want to eat chocolate?" Just as Antonio gave up, the voice that appeared yesterday suddenly came from behind. Of course, there was the same words. Antonio abruptly turned around. Just like yesterday, the mysterious guy extended a piece of chocolate towards him. Perhaps because he was too hungry, Antonio grabbed the chocolate without thinking and tore it open before putting it into his mouth. "What can I do for you?" Antonio, whose mouth was full of chocolate, raised his head and said, "Big brother, can you really eat anything?" "Yes." Then Antonio hesitated for a while, then said while counting his fingers, "I'll use my lifespan." No, I'll use, Suddenly Antonio said, "Marina doesn't like me. Then I'll use my love. You'll turn me into an adult." "Adult?" Antonio nodded and said, "Yes, adult. I'll grow up and be as tall as my father. No, I'll be bigger, longer, and thicker than him." Seeing this big brother didn't respond, Antonio said uneasily, Is it enough? If not, what else do I have to pay?" "No, it's enough." It was like a gust of wind. Everything in front of him changed. When the strange parchment opened in front of his eyes, Antonio only felt that his whole body was buried in ice and snow and winter, which made him shiver. That man said that the contract was completed and then disappeared in front of him again. However, Antonio already felt that he was different. He stretched out his hand and looked at his palm, which had become huge. His arms had become thicker than his thighs, and his solid muscles could be bulged even without clenching his fists. His legs were even longer than his previous height. Antonio subconsciously touched his cheeks. There was some stubble on his face. Right, and his vision. Now, his vision was like standing on a stool. What's more, his clothes had been torn apart by his body, and could only hang on his body like strips of cloth. The strap of his backpack had been broken long ago. Antonio exclaimed in disbelief. He pinched his face hard and felt the pain, the burning pain. But he smiled. "I've grown up. I've really grown up. I'm an adult now." Chapter 247. In the afternoon. It had been more than 8 hours. Oleg had driven his yellow pickup truck to almost every place in the city, but he still couldn't find Antonio. I shouldn't have hit him. Oleg couldn't help but blame himself deeply. Since 7 years ago, when Antonio was the only one left in his life, this little life was almost the driving force that supported him to live. "Antonio, you'd better be safe." Mr. Oleg, who was not a believer, was more pious than ever before, and more pious than ordinary believers. But he felt that such piety came with some hypocrisy, so he remembered that praying was also utilitarian in nature. Finally, it was the same color as the yellow pickup truck, and it was still moving in this bustling city. Oleg's eyes were so focused on the backs of those children who were only a little taller than the fire hydrant, so he didn't notice that when the pickup truck turned the corner, a pair of eyes were watching him. And the source of the eyes was a very strong body. How strong was he? In the eyes of passers-by, it was probably like this. This guy was as strong as a brown bear. Antonio just watched the familiar pickup truck slowly passing by him. He clearly saw Oleg in the driver's seat. Perhaps because he had grown up, Antonio felt that his eyesight had become very good, so he could clearly see the trace of anxiety on Oleg's face. "Dad." Antonio subconsciously moved his lips at the moment the pickup truck passed by, and he even intended to wave his hand, but Oleg didn't notice his existence at all. Watching the pickup truck finally drove into another street, Antonio said to himself, "Dad really can't recognize me. I've really grown up." Antonio looked at his reflection in the glass window of the shop facing the street, and the more he looked, the more satisfied he was after growing up. Yes, when he left the factory, he quietly took a suit of clothes from the nearby yard. Otherwise, he would be naked now. "Sir, what do you want?" The shop assistant came out. It was a cake shop. Antonio thought for a moment and said, "Give me this chocolate cake." The feeling of growing up was simply too good. She could buy whatever she liked, and there would be no one nagging by her side, telling her not to do this and not to do that. Antonio ate the cake with relish as he strolled around the streets. He found that many people would look at him, especially those big sisters. They all liked to look at him, but he didn't understand why these big sisters would smile at him. He even bumped into some who kept blinking their eyes. All right, he even bumped into a big sister who accidentally bumped into him and pinched his chest. It was an itchy feeling. "Hey, handsome, do you want to have a drink with me?" I'm not going. I'm going to play with my friends. Every week on this day, we make an appointment to play video games together. Is that so? Oh, bye-bye." Then, the big sister's smile disappeared, and she walked away without another word. Antonio was puzzled. He scratched his head and wondered if it was more appropriate for him to agree to the other party's request. "I'm an adult now. If we meet again, you should agree, right? That's the Lord." Just as he was thinking to himself, someone suddenly dashed towards him. The man even shouted, "Get out of the way! Get out of the way! Get out of the way!" Two burly men were chasing after the guy who was yelling and running away. The guy who was yelling was being chased by someone. At this moment, and the two burly men directly ran past Antonio. Antonio opened his mouth at this time. He obviously recognized it was being chased by the two big men. "Uncle Nikita, you can't escape." Nikita, who was finally chased into a dead end, looked at the wall in front of him with annoyance. Why was there a wall here? When did this happen? Which bastard built it? But no matter how he cursed the guy who built this wall, he had to face the fact that he had no way to escape. Nikita had to turn around, pressing his hands in front of himself, trying to negotiate with the other party. "Hey, buddy, you won't get the money if you kill me here. Why don't you give me some time to think of a way?" "Well, my dear Nikita, do you know how many guys ask us to give them time to think of a way, but the result is that they quietly run away every month? According to the casino's rule, after borrowing money, you have to pay it back within 12 hours. Oh, dear Mr. Nikita, didn't you hear the rule clearly before you borrow the money? But your interest is too high." Nikita looked at the two with cold sweat. He really regretted drinking alone last night. If it wasn't for the excessive alcohol that made his brain crash, he wouldn't go into the casino in the basement at all, intending to try his luck. The result was obvious, and now was the result. "The interest has been agreed at the beginning, hasn't it?" That man snorted. "Mr. Nikita, go back with us. We'll think of a way there. If you intend to resist to the end, then don't blame us for being rude." Seeing the two big men clenching their fists and approaching with crackling sounds, Nikita's heart suddenly beat violently. But at this time, Nikita could hardly believe his eyes. One of the big men's body flew up. No, he was lifted up. An unusually tall guy grabbed the big man's belt with one hand and twisted his arm with the other, lifting him up like this. God, Nikita had never seen such a strong guy before. The strong guy suddenly shouted, throwing the big man out fiercely. The big man who was thrown out suddenly hung in the dustbin. It seemed that his head hit the lid, and he groaned painfully but couldn't climb out. Seeing this, the other big man gritted his teeth and rushed to the strong guy, holding his waist with both hands, pushing him to the wall. But this strong guy punched the big man's back fiercely with his fist. After 2 or 3 punches, the big man's hands loosened. He felt like his spine was about to break, not like being punched by a fist, but being knocked down by a hammer. As soon as he loosened his hands, his body was directly lifted up and thrown into the dustbin. The burst of stench almost made him faint. But that huge guy directly knocked down the lid of the dustbin and knocked the exterior of the dustbin forcefully. Bang, 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 sound exploded inside, making the big man suddenly feel dizzy. He reached out to push the lid, but found that he couldn't push it open. In this stinking environment, he even began to vomit. Outside, Nikita swallowed his saliva, looking at the scene that just happened. At this time, he saw that the big man who suddenly helped him was on the top of the dustbin, with a complacent look. Oleg, oh no, I'm wrong. Nikita hesitated, but finally walked to the front of the big man. My God, you look like a friend of mine, but you're much younger than him. In fact, if you look carefully, there are many differences. Antonio wanted to call Uncle Nikita as usual, but he thought that even his father couldn't recognize him, so Uncle Nikita shouldn't be able to recognize him. This naughty kid who had an adult body but was still a naughty kid suddenly had a mischievous idea. Is your friend as strong as me? Oh, my God, you're stronger than Oleg. Nikita exclaimed. You're just like a Siberian bear. By the way, thank you for saving me. Antonio, who was sitting on the dustbin, kicked his legs and said, I think you seem to be bullied by bad guys, so I saved you. How about it? Are you satisfied? Nikita gave a start, feeling that this guy was a little weird. But he didn't think too much, so he said, very satisfied. I can't be more satisfied than this. By the way, what's your name? Are you from this district? Why haven't I seen you before? To be honest, in Nikita's opinion, such a strong body was very eye-catching. Even if he hadn't seen him before, he should have heard about him. My name is Antonio blinked. Anton. I just came to Moscow, so it's normal that you haven't seen me before. Just came? Nikita gave a start, nodding thoughtfully. By the way, why don't we find a place to eat and talk? Antonio felt that it was a very novel thing to chat with Uncle Nikita like this, so he nodded. Nikita suddenly said, Wait, can you come down? Antonio supported himself with his hands and jumped down. Nikita opened the lid of the dustbin with his back to Antonio. Let me see how these two guys are. As he said, his palms reached out to the two men, who were completely fainted by the stench. Nikita took out 2 wallets from the two men's pockets, took out the banknotes directly, and then threw the wallets back into the dustbin. How are they? Antonio asked curiously at this time. Nikita quickly turned around and walked to Antonio's side. He wanted to put his hand on Antonio's shoulder, but the height difference was too big, so he simply patted Antonio's back and said with a smile, It's nothing. He just fainted. He'll wake up in a while. By the way, I know a very good restaurant. The food is delicious. I'll take you there. Oh, by the way, I should invite you to dinner to thank you for saving me. If possible, let me take care of you today. Anton, this is your laboratory? Long ago, Miss Maid said that Yui had her own laboratory because the former boss basically didn't move around, and in order to better meet the requirements of some customers. The location was under the unusually gorgeous subway station in Moscow. To be specific, it should be under the Red Square area, which was deeper than the railway tracks. Yui once said that it would be troublesome to move the things here. Looking at the layout of this huge basement, Luochio finally realized how troublesome it was. Boss Luo opened his mouth, but didn't say anything in the end. Chapter 248. Yui was not only an expert in life, but she was also an inventor. She had too much time to fully explore today's various scientific fields. Of course, the soul in the body created by alchemy also needed to have enough wisdom. However, Boss Luo, who had heard and questioned the 10,000-hour rule, actually felt that even ordinary people could do something with 300 years of time, as long as they were free enough. Master, just as he was curious about the things in this huge laboratory like a child, Yui suddenly walked over. She was wearing a white coat again. Taking the folder from the servant girl, Luochio looked at the contents inside and listened to Yu Ye's words. Master, please take a look. The first one is the 2 kinds of medicine we found from Lingung at the beginning. The second one is the analysis report of the medicine you didn't use last time from Miss Jez. Hearing this, Luochio subconsciously glanced at a figure who was leaning against the corner of the wall. There was someone who was in charge of this place. On the contrary, there was a very loyal and tireless manager here, an AI robot. It was said that its basic algorithm was improved based on the research core of a certain song, but it was still far from reaching the level of artificial intelligence that could truly evolve independently. There was an apartment near the laboratory, and there was also a similar AI in it. The servant girl, who never went out, would send something interesting to the apartment through mail if she was not here. Then, through the operation of the drone from the apartment, she would finally send the things here, completely achieving a kind of remote control. Of course, this was because the club was not here now. Looking at this person named Adam. Yes, the one in the apartment was named Eve. In short, when looking at this Adam, Boss Luo sighed again. Sure enough, he robbed places like the National Space Administration. He even found a data report suspected to be a civil aviation satellite in the corner. Let's read the report. Luochio knew that the drug used by Lin Gong was a substance that could promote the activity of brain cells. As long as the dosage could be controlled, it could make people energetic and smart, but if it was overdosed, they would go berserk. And the second drug he hid, which was the kind that the Michael Club sold in large quantities to amass money, was actually the kind that was tracked by a private agent. What was known was that the Michael Club made a total of 2 different drugs, from the ingredients to the formula. Anyway, Luochio didn't understand what these ingredients were, so he turned to the end to read the conclusion of the report. The second drug could be synthesized with materials already known in the world, but the first drug couldn't be deconstructed from known materials. This was because the first type of smart drug contained 2 strange substances. They were not known materials in the world that could be used to make drugs. After comparison with the database, the source of these 2 substances was discovered: vampire blood and werewolf brain matter. Yes. Yi touched the black-rimmed glasses on her face and said seriously, "There's also some vampire blood and werewolf brain stored in here. Before going to Moscow, I have asked Adam to try to replicate the first drug with the deconstructed formula. Well, we should be able to get the finished product soon, and then do some clinical trials." Miss Maid's words suddenly stopped. The reason was that the club boss suddenly put down the document in his hand and reached out to take off the black-rimmed glasses on her face. Luochio whispered, "I said, this time I'm accompanying you to visit the old place. What's the difference between you and usual?" Yi shook her head. "I've lived here for a long time, so it's not an old place." Luochio said, "But I've only known you for less than 3 months. But here there's your past, isn't it?" Folding the black-rimmed glasses, gently putting it on the table and adjusting its position, Luochio said, "We will always be together." Yi looked straight into Luochio's eyes. Miss Maid's sapphire blue eyes had always been very cold, because this pair of sapphire blue eyes were essentially created by polishing sapphires. Now, they seemed to have some soft light other than the cold brilliance of sapphires. The soft light slowly spread. Yi whispered, "Adam, stop the experiment first." Nikita felt that he seemed to be lucky. In his 31 years of life, he had never thought that he was so lucky like today. The reason was naturally the man named Anton in front of him. He was so strong that he didn't look like a human being at all. Nikita thought that perhaps only those boxers who were hidden somewhere in the Siberian plateau and received strict training, who were specially trained for underground boxing, could be compared with this big guy. More importantly, he completely felt that this Anton was completely ignorant of the ways of the world. He was as childish as a child. Had he ever seen a guy who didn't care about other people's gazes and ate a children's meal with a national flag on it? Moreover, he ate it so happily that the sauce was all over his face. This guy in front of him was one. What a naive and unsophisticated fellow this was. "Anton, you said you have no place to live for the time being and lost your identity certificate, right?" Nikita squinted and smiled. "Yes, Anton." Anton was completely following his own idea, "But I'm going to build a tree house on a big tree in the park. Uncle Nikita, I want to build a base that belongs to me only." "Brother Nikita," Nikita corrected. "No, just call me Nikita." "Oh, Anton, Nikita, when I build the base, I want to invite you to be my first guest." "Base? Wasn't this guy a bit mentally abnormal?" Nikita looked at Anton again. At first, he thought this guy might be playing with him, but after a short meal and many questions, Nikita felt that this guy might really be a guy with an IQ disorder. "But Anton, building a base requires a lot of money. Do you have it?" "Yes." Anton nodded. "I have 8,300 rubles of property. I forgot I bought a piece of chocolate cake in the afternoon. Now, I only have 8,180 rubles. Nikita said seriously. Anton, unfortunately, I have to tell you that your property is not enough for you to build a base. Then what should I do? Anton was a loss. But not enough money. It's very simple. Because we can make money, right? Nikita said mysteriously. I know a place that can make a lot of money. Do you want to go? Really? Anton's eyes lit up, but he hesitated. But what's that for? I don't do bad things. It's not a bad thing. Nikita smiled. Just fight with others on the stage. Anton, you're the strongest person I've ever seen. With your ability, as long as you're on the stage, you can easily beat the opponent. Fight? Unexpectedly, Anton shook his head and said, No, my dad said that only bad kids fight. I won't go. Nikita was stunned for a while. Are you still a child? You're an adult. Why do you still listen to your father? I tell you, only fools or bookworms will listen to their father. I'm not a child anymore. Anton took a deep breath. Let's fight. I'm not afraid of anyone, because I'm stronger than my father now. Ding dong. Listening to the sound of the bell ringing, listening to the explosive cheers around, watching a guy who was said to be a boxer fall on the ground and couldn't get up, and even watching the referee raise Anton's arm and announce the victory, Nikita felt as happy as being in heaven. This guy, he's too strong. He's really too strong. Nikita followed the audience. The punters cheered together. I'm rich. I'm rich. I'm going to be rich. Anton, you're my god. Oh my god, my god. I'm really rich. Wow. Chapter 249. He was wearing a black leather jacket, and his long blonde hair was cut short. Just like that, he sat on a motorcycle and stopped on the desert-like road. In the middle of the road, in this chaotic area of the Middle East, when a truck came closer and closer, and even when the horn kept sounding, she didn't seem to want to leave. In the end, the truck had to stop, and two men with scarves wrapped around their cheeks came out of the truck. Yes, they also had a gun in their hands, and it was a popular type in the Middle East. People called it. It should be a machine gun called an AK-47. Who are you? Go away. The two men pointed their machine guns at Jess Private and shouted fiercely in the Middle East dialect. At this time, Jess Private's face suddenly showed a charming smile, but the two men were more willing to call a sneer. They felt something was wrong. After exchanging glances with each other, they quickly made a decision. They decided to shoot at the woman who was blocking their way. However, when they were about to pull the trigger, the woman in the black leather jacket in front of them reached out as fast as lightning and pulled out a silver pistol from the back of the motorcycle. He took aim and fired. Two extremely fast shots and two extremely accurate shots hit the glabella of the two men who had only pulled the trigger halfway. Bang, bang. The loud gunshots should be able to travel a long distance on this vast road. Damn it. At the same time, from the back of the truck, four men with the same outfit and equipment jumped out at the same time. One of them even had a bullet belt on his body. They also chose to sweep this woman with a crushing gaze at the first moment. At this time, the engine of the motorcycle roared like a beast. Jess grabbed the handlebars of the motorcycle with both hands and pressed down heavily on the front wheel shock absorber. He pulled the front of the motorcycle up with all his might. The powerful driving force of the rear wheel made the motorcycle almost stand upright. The motorcycle turned into a ferocious beast, directly charging towards these men. After pulling out a silver pistol from the front of the motorcycle, Jez also pulled out a black pistol from his left leg. The two guns from the left and right sides of the motorcycle were still shooting accurately. When a man's body fell down at the same time, the motorcycle didn't even reach the truck's headlight. It had already stopped. Jess Private turned her long legs and walked down from the motorcycle. She easily climbed over the front of the truck and came to the back of the truck. Here, Jess Private saw more than a dozen children ranging from 7 or 8 years old to 12 or 13 years old. They hugged each other tightly and looked at the woman standing on top of the truck in horror. It's okay, I'll send you home. Looking at these orphans, it was as if he was looking at himself in the past. His voice became gentler as he put away his black and silver pistols. At this time, Allah al-Wakbar. It was a man who had suddenly appeared behind the truck. He had probably been hiding behind the truck since the beginning. But at this moment, this man's hand was holding a grenade in his hand. He was going to pull the grenade's safety. In a flash, Jess Private's eyes flashed like lightning, and she suddenly waved her arm. A bluish-purple arc of light shot out from her arm and hit the man's body. The man seemed to have become a conductor, and a powerful electric current crazily wreaked havoc in his body. His whole body was numb and lost consciousness. He himself would never have consciousness again, for he was dead. "Sister, are you an angel?" A little girl looked at this scene in surprise and subconsciously said, "Angel." Jess Private shook her head, but said, "I'm just an avenger. Tell me where your home is." She needs to send these children back as soon as possible and then rely on the communication on the truck to contact a stronghold. Next, she will eliminate this stronghold, one of the strongholds in the Middle East under the Michael Club's banner. After leaving that eastern country, she has eliminated 2 of the same strongholds in this period of time. But there will only be more. Jess Private looked at the rolling dust and silently said, "I'm ING." Jess Private drove the truck and forcefully turned the steering wheel, making the truck turn around quickly. The tires rubbed the ground and powerfully swept away the bodies on the ground. The bodies on the road were suddenly swept out. A huge body was flying out of the ring's ropes and fell to the ground. The audience around the ring dodged in time, so the person flying out of the ring could only hit the ground. "This guy can't stand up." The audience holding the fighter's ticket had to think in despair. Anton, our Anton. He once again defeated a powerful opponent. Since the start of the competition 2 days ago, this is Anton's 7th victory. Is a legend about to be born? Oh, my God. Anton, you are the most powerful fighter I have ever seen. Shout. The referee raised Anton's arm, shouting crazily. Anton. The scene's shouts continued. But Anton didn't know why, but he hated these people's crazy shouts at this time. He walked down the ring silently, ignoring Nikita, who came to talk to him, and walked towards the lounge. Nikita, who had chased him all the way to the lounge, closed the door at this time. After thinking for a while, he walked to Anton and said with a smile, "What's wrong? Aren't you happy to win that guy just now?" Anton shook his head, looked at Nikita, and suddenly asked, "Nikita, how much money did you make today? Today's harvest is good." Speaking of this, Nikita couldn't help but feel happy. "Nikita, is my money enough for me to build a treehouse base?" Nikita gave a start. He completely forgot about this matter. In fact, in just these 2 or 3 days, through Ndong's victory on the stage, not only did he receive a generous amount of prize money, he even secretly placed bets and earned a lot of money. This was the most money he had ever earned in his life. "Oh, dear Anton, you should know that it's not easy to build a treehouse base." Nikita now said seriously, "You should know that a tree is not just a tree. It's still on the land. Do you know the land? If it's not private, it's the country's. Therefore, you have to buy the land under the tree as well. Only then can you be considered to have truly owned the tree. But to buy and sell land, you need a lot of money." Anton shook his head, "But I don't want to continue fighting." Nikita hurriedly said, "How can you not fight? You're invincible. You're the most powerful one here. As long as you stand on the ring, it means that money will constantly fly into your pocket, and all you need to do is to throw your opponent down. You see how simple it is." Anton stood up. His figure was so tall that when Nikita looked up at him, a strange pressure suddenly emerged in Nikita's heart. "Anton, what do you want to do?" Anton shook his head. "Nikita, that was the last time I fought. I won't fight again. I'm leaving. Just give me the money I earned." "What? You won't fight?" "No." Nikita subconsciously shouted angrily. Perhaps Anton's face did have a certain degree of shock, so that he subconsciously showed a frightened expression. Damn it, this Siberian bear-like guy was afraid of his shouts. Nikita looked at this scene inconceivably. He frowned, but he didn't want to push Anton too hard. Who knew what this guy would do if he was pushed too hard? This guy's common sense was very low. "Well, Anton, 3 more rounds. Only 3 rounds. After that, we won't fight again, okay?" Nikita negotiated and said. Anton thought for a while, suddenly stretched out his palm, and especially his little finger. What were you doing? Hook your finger. We agreed on 3 rounds. Anton said naturally, who knew what Nikita had experienced in his heart. Anyway, he was inconceivable and didn't know whether to cry or laugh. His heart was like a llama running wildly with this strong man. Hook, hook, hook. Nikita, this is a man's promise. Chapter 250. Tretyakov Museum of Fine Arts. It was a Monday, so it was still open. Boss Luo, who felt that every building in this city was new, naturally didn't let go of his famous art museum. He took a frontal photo here and sent it to sub-editor Rin's mobile phone. Today's task was completed. He had to report his whereabouts at least once a day to prove that he was safe. This was the minimum requirement for Boss Luo's trip. Since we come to Tretyakov, we naturally have to see the painting The Nameless Maiden, Yi said beside Luochio. Luochio, who was reading the booklet of the gallery, nodded and said, one of the top 10 paintings in the world. I'm curious about it. Except for the closing day, Tretyakov Museum of Fine Arts would receive many tourists every day. Among the crowd, the club boss and the servant girl simply passed the security check and walked into the old museum of Tretyakov Museum of Fine Arts. Boss Luo, who didn't care much about the scenery on the road, always went straight to the goal. He didn't stop in front of any famous painting. Looking directly at the woman depicted in the painting The Nameless Maiden in the key area of the exhibition hall, Luochio had a different way of appreciation from ordinary people. He could feel the mood of the painter. Many people think that the woman in the painting is Tolstoy's Anna Karenina. Karenina was the main character in Karenina. However, this was something that ordinary people couldn't investigate. So some people think it should be an unknown actress. It seems that only the author himself knows who she is. Luochio listened to Yu Ye's explanation, which was much better than the commentators in this exhibition area. Luochio referred to the voice. Of course, this could also be heard from the commentator's mouth, but the following words might not be spoken by the commentator. But in fact, the woman in the painting, he loves this woman. Suddenly, Yu Ye's words were interrupted. It was a tourist of the same batch, standing behind them. He had soft wavy hair, a narrow and high nose, thin lips, and a lush beard. At first glance, he looked like a middle-aged man. But for Luochio and Yu Yi, who were more sensitive to vitality, this person was actually quite young, probably not more than 30 years old. Luochio didn't feel unhappy about being suddenly talked to. He just curiously looked at this typical Russian young man and asked with interest, "How do you know that the painter loves his model?" There seems to be such a saying, too. This girl is a figment of the artist's imagination. The young man with hair looked at the painting. His eyes focused, and even his whole mind didn't seem to be around him. Even though he could respond to the questions around him, even though he knew who was around him, he gave off the feeling that he was the only one standing before the painting. This was a very rare kind of concentration. "Hey, Luochio, I can feel it." The young man suddenly closed his eyes. His left hand spread out in front of him, and his thumb was slightly clasped. His right hand was also raised at the same time, and his fingers seemed to be holding something. This was the posture of painting. He seemed to be talking to himself, not responding to anyone's question. "I can feel it. Every stroke, every painting. When I write, when I hesitate, it's so strong, so touching." It seemed that he didn't just make this gesture to be more convincing. His right hand was moving slowly in the air. It wasn't a posture that seemed to be painting, but he was painting in his heart. But he seemed to be so focused that he didn't feel anything outside his body. At this time, his body was being held up by the 2 guards of the art gallery, one on the left and one on the right, and they were dragging him out. The young man didn't resist at all. He still had his eyes closed, and he was still painting with a non-existent palette and brush in his hand. "I'm sorry, sir, miss, this guy just now didn't disturb you?" A man who looked like a staff of the gallery came to Luochio and Yu Yi and asked politely. Luochio asked softly, should he disturb others? The staff was stunned. Such an answer was rarely encountered. No, this guy generally doesn't disturb anyone, but only us." The staff shook his head and said helplessly. Looking at the puzzled look of the Oriental man in front of him, the staff simply said, He was originally an employee of the gallery, but he was fired because of some mistakes he made. But this guy can still sneak in every time. Oh, sir, you have to know, as long as he comes in through the normal way and has the ticket, we welcome him. But he snuck in on his own accord, so you should understand. This kind of behavior is like a madman. Go ahead. Luaccio nodded and didn't ask anything more. The staff smiled and said, Sir, your Russian is really good. He wanted to praise him, but this Oriental guest didn't seem to listen to him at all. Instead, he directly turned around and looked at the famous painting that was treasured here. He was so focused, just like the guy who was dragged out just now. The staff had a feeling that nothing could shake this guest's concentration at this time. Damn it! He suddenly felt a strange chill, and his whole body inexplicably shuddered. He lowered his head and walked away quickly. The third day, there was a very strong smell of alcohol in Oleg's house, which even seemed to be mixed with the rancid smell of his soul. The reason for that was because he really did look like he was rotten. It was just Nikita's most intuitive feeling. Wearing brand new clothes, Nikita suddenly remembered brother Oleg, who had always taken care of him. Today, he planned to treat this brother to a good meal. But, Oleg, what happened to you? Nikita walked to the front of Oleg, frowning and looking at the drunk man. I went to the company, and the boss said you haven't come to work for 3 days. Are you drinking here? The drunk Oleg opened his eyes slightly and burped. It seemed that he recognized Nikita. He used his hands to push himself up from the sofa, but he didn't manage to push himself up. Instead, he fell down again. Nikita quickly bent down to help Oleg up, but Oleg's hands were groping on the table, sweeping down the beer bottles one by one. Give me some vodka. Damn it. Nikita scolded. You're not the Oleg I know. You shouldn't be like this. What the hell happened to you? Oleg suddenly stopped. He patted his forehead hard, as if this was the only way to sober himself up. Oleg's eyes became bigger, but they were bloodshot. You're right. I shouldn't be like this. I'm going to find Antonio. Oleg pulled Nikita's arm and stood up, muttering to himself. I'm going to find him, find him, find him. Where's my key? Where's my car key? Where's my key? His voice became louder, more violent, and angrier. He was like a lion. Where's my key? Nikita swore that if Anton, who brought him wealth, was the strongest guy he had ever seen, then Oleg now was the guy with the most terrifying eyes he had ever seen. Brother, please tell me, what happened to Antonio? He left, he's missing. Oleg hammered his forehead hard. The alcohol gave him a splitting headache, but it couldn't be compared with the pain in his heart. 3 days, 3 days. What the hell am I doing? I promised Kamala to take good care of her child. What the hell did I do? Looking at Oleg's appearance, Nikita's originally happy mood seemed to have turned unpleasant at this moment. Suddenly someone broke in.